Before we start, it's a good idea to go to bed and relax. I also want to ask you to subscribe to my channel, like it and write in the comments where you are from and what time it is. Using the link in the description you can support me. Thank you. Sweet dreams. Have you ever imagined standing in a city that could vanish in minutes? In 12th century Japan, entire towns sat precariously on the slopes of volcanoes, trembling with earthquakes and threatened by sudden eruptions. Life here was a constant gamble, where every dawn might bring a towering wall of lava or a crushing tremor that swallowed homes, markets, and lives. This story will immerse you in a single day of survival in these volcanic lands, following ordinary people navigating extraordinary dangers. You'll see the struggle, fear, and fleeting beauty of life where nature itself is an unstoppable force. The morning began with the distant rumble, almost imperceptible at first, like a giant stirring beneath the earth. Matsuo, a young potter living at the edge of the village near Mount Asama, rubbed his eyes and strained to listen. It was not unusual here. Sometimes the ground would shiver or the wind would carry a strange ash smell from the volcano, but today, there was a tension in the air that made the hairs on his arms stand on end. He stepped out of his wooden house, the floorboards creaking beneath his bare feet, and looked toward the slopes that loomed over the village. Smoke curled in delicate spirals from the forest above, mingling with the morning mist. The villagers were already stirring, women carried water from the river, children chased chickens across the dirt roads, and merchants prepared for the day. Yet, Matsuo couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. As he walked toward his workshop, the earth trembled lightly underfoot. Matsuo paused, steadying himself against the doorframe of a neighbor's house. The tremor subsided as quickly as it had arrived, leaving behind a thin layer of dust that drifted through the morning air. Conversations hushed, eyes turned to the mountains, and an unspoken fear spread. In the volcanic lands of Japan, even a minor quake could be a harbinger of devastation. Inside his workshop, the familiar scent of clay and soot offered some comfort. Matsuo began shaping a pot, fingers pressing and smoothing the soft material, trying to focus on routine. But every now and then, the ground's subtle vibration reminded him that life here was never routine. The walls of the village were no match for molten rock or falling ash, and every person understood that survival depended not just on skill or strength, but on timing, luck, and respect for the unpredictable earth. By mid-morning, smoke had grown darker, curling into thick columns visible even from the center of the village. Matsuo wiped his hands and stepped outside. Villagers were gathering near the central square, exchanging anxious whispers. An elder, eyes clouded with years of experience, gestured toward the volcano. "It will not wait," he said simply. Matsuo felt a shiver run down his spine. Every hour here was a gamble, and today, the stakes were higher than ever before. The ash began to fall like fine gray snow, coating rooftops, fields, and the villagers' hair and clothes. Matsuo shielded his face with his sleeve, coughing as tiny particles filled the air. The smell of sulfur was unmistakable, stinging his nostrils and throat. Children were crying, and women hurried to gather belongings or herd animals into makeshift shelters. The elder's warning from earlier seemed all the more urgent now. In these lands, survival was never guaranteed. The village's main street had become a scene of controlled chaos. Merchants hastily packed their goods into carts, while some tried to fortify doors with wooden beams. Matsuo glanced at his workshop. His pots, still drying on shelves, were delicate and heavy. They could not be moved easily. He felt the weight of his responsibility, both to his craft and to the community. Every step outside felt like walking on uncertain ground, both physically and metaphorically. The volcano had begun its early warning, a series of small tremors now shaking the earth more consistently. Villagers were beginning to organize themselves, knowing that panic would accomplish nothing. Matsuo followed the elder toward the central square, where a rough map of the area had been spread out on a wooden table. The elder pointed at routes away from the slopes, paths through bamboo groves, and river crossings. "Water and open land," he said. "Stay low. Keep together." Matsuo memorized the instructions, though he knew that plans could change in an instant when the mountain decided to rage. As the morning wore on, the tremors became sharper, vibrating through the wooden beams of houses and through Matsuo's chest. He noticed cracks forming in the walls near the base of his house. Dust fell from ceilings, and the once solid earth beneath him seemed uncertain. The villagers' fear was tangible, some prayed aloud, others silently, hands clasped tightly. All knew the stories: entire villages swallowed in minutes, families wiped from memory, crops lost forever. By mid-morning, the elders' predictions proved true. A loud roar echoed from the mountain, reverberating across the valley. Matsuo's heart raced. Smoke and ash began to curl violently into the sky, and a distant glow hinted at molten rock moving down the slopes. He could feel the heat, a subtle but unmistakable warning. Villagers began retreating from their homes, guiding animals and children along the planned escape routes. Every step was careful and calculated. One misstep in the ash-laden paths could lead to injury or death. Matsuo thought of his pots, his livelihood, the fragile beauty he had spent hours shaping. But the mountain left no room for sentimentality. He grabbed a small sack with essentials, a few coins, and a tiny bundle of food. He had no time to save his work. Survival came first. As he moved toward the square, he saw neighbors struggling to carry elderly relatives. The air was thick, making breathing a labor in itself. He coughed repeatedly, feeling the heat intensify with every tremor. The elder's voice cut through the chaos, urging calm. Do not separate. Trust the paths. Keep your heads low. Matsuo followed, noticing the distant rumble intensifying into something like a constant growl. Trees shook, birds scattered, and a faint orange glow could now be seen against the dark smoke. Every instinct told him that the earth could shift violently at any second. By late morning, the first streams of lava became visible down the slopes, carving glowing scars into the mountainside. Matsuo stopped for a moment, awe and terror mingling in his chest. He had heard of these eruptions before, stories told by travelers or elders, but witnessing it was entirely different. The river of molten rock moved inexorably, indifferent to the world it consumed. Villagers clutched one another, some silently weeping, others muttering prayers. The air grew hotter, and the ash fell thicker, covering everything in a suffocating gray. Matsuo realized that today, the mountain was not just a neighbor, it was an unstoppable force, a living entity that demanded respect. He thought of the day ahead, the danger, and the uncertainty, and he understood something profound: in these volcanic lands of 12th century Japan, no one could truly control their fate. The best one could do was move, adapt, and cling to fleeting moments of hope amidst overwhelming chaos. By early afternoon, the village had emptied almost entirely. Matsuo moved with a small group of families, sticking close to the elders' guidance. The paths led through bamboo groves and open fields, areas slightly safer from falling ash and lava flows. Yet the tremors continued, more forceful now, making the earth beneath them heave unpredictably. Each step required vigilance. A hidden crack or a sudden sinkhole could mean instant disaster. The ash storm thickened, turning daylight into a dim gray haze. Matsuo's clothes were coated in dust, his hair stiff with particles. Coughing, he tried to keep pace with the others, feeling the heat radiating from the distant lava. Occasionally, a glowing ember would float down, landing harmlessly on the ground or igniting a dry patch of grass. Panic bubbled in the group, but the elder's calm presence kept them moving steadily. His knowledge of the land, paths, and safe spots was their only real protection. Matsuo noticed small signs of destruction along the route: collapsed walls of abandoned houses, a burned cart, and trees split or charred. The mountain's fury was indiscriminate: no home, workshop, or field could escape if it lay in the path of the eruption. The villagers murmured stories of relatives lost in previous eruptions, their voices tense but steady. Fear had become a constant companion, and yet survival demanded that they push forward, step by step. The group reached a river that cut across the valley. Its waters, once calm and reflective, were now murky with sediment from landslides upstream. Crossing it required careful coordination. Matsuo helped guide children and elderly across makeshift rafts and fallen logs. The river was both a barrier and a lifeline. It offered a temporary reprieve from the advancing lava and a source of water, but it could turn deadly with sudden tremors or mud flows. Once across, the terrain opened into a flat plain, slightly removed from the volcano's immediate path. The heat was still intense, and the ash continued to fall in relentless waves. Matsuo crouched, covering his mouth and nose with a piece of cloth. Around him, villagers scavenged for any remaining resources, bundles of rice, drinking water, and herbs. Every item salvaged was precious. Survival depended not only on movement but also on careful management of what little they had. As they rested briefly, the elder examined the sky. Smoke and ash swirled above the mountain like a living cloud, casting dark shadows over the plains. "It will not be contained," he muttered. "We must keep moving until nightfall, or we risk being trapped." Matsuo's hands ached, not just from exhaustion but from the constant vigilance required. Each tremor reminded him that even a momentary lapse could be fatal. Matsuo's thoughts drifted to his home, his workshop, and the fragile pots left behind. He mourned them quietly, understanding that material things were insignificant compared to life itself. Around him, others were grieving similarly, but survival left little time for extended sorrow. The day was long, and the mountain's anger showed no signs of abating. By mid-afternoon, the group encountered another village, partially abandoned, partially destroyed. Smoke rose from burnt roofs, and the streets were littered with debris. Matsuo could see signs of the eruption's earlier reach: charred carts, collapsed homes, and footprints that abruptly ended in rubble. The elder signaled them to keep moving, bypassing the village to avoid the most dangerous areas. Every shortcut, every familiar path, could lead to either safety or sudden death. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, the glow from the volcano intensified, painting the sky in ominous shades of orange and red. Tremors grew stronger and more frequent, each one rattling bones and shaking the earth beneath them. Matsuo realized that nightfall would not bring relief. Darkness would only magnify the danger, hiding cracks, unstable paths, and new threats. The mountain ruled both day and night, and every living creature was at its mercy. The group pressed on, knowing that endurance was their only chance. Matsuo's lungs burned, his legs ached, and his mind was tense, but he kept moving, step by step. The land was unforgiving, yet among the ash, heat, and trembling earth, there was a strange, raw beauty, the fierce power of nature, unmasked and unyielding. By late afternoon, the landscape had transformed into a harsh, alien world. The ash continued to fall relentlessly, layering the ground in a thick gray carpet that muffled footsteps and blurred familiar landmarks. Matsuo's eyes stung, and he coughed persistently, but he pressed on, driven by instinct and the guidance of the elder. Every step was measured, every glance over his shoulder alert for sudden shifts in the terrain. The mountain's roar echoed across the valley, a constant reminder that life here was fragile and temporary. The small group reached a grove of twisted pine trees that had survived past eruptions. The elder motioned for them to rest briefly under the sparse shade. Matsuo collapsed onto a fallen log, his hands blackened with ash and dirt, and allowed himself a moment to breathe. Around him, children clung to parents, and villagers murmured quiet prayers. The fear was palpable, but so was a sense of communal determination. They were ordinary people caught in extraordinary circumstances, bound together by circumstance and necessity. Matsuo noticed the subtle changes in the air, the sulfurous smell stronger now, the heat more intense, and the ground beneath their feet quivering almost continuously. He realized that the path they had chosen, though safer than the slopes of the volcano, was still fraught with danger. Hidden cracks in the earth could give way without warning, and ash-laden streams might become torrents of boiling mud. Every decision mattered. As the group prepared to move again, the elder spoke in a low voice, almost to himself. "The village may not survive, but we can endure if we keep to the plains and rivers. Nature is cruel, yet patient. We must be the same." Matsuo absorbed the words, understanding the truth in them. Survival was not heroic, it was persistent. It required calm, attention, and unwavering resolve. They continued along a narrow path, winding through rocky outcrops and scorched fields. The distant mountain glowed ominously, its summit obscured by thick plumes of smoke. Occasionally, Matsuo glimpsed rivers of molten lava, snaking slowly down the mountainside, devouring everything in their path. The villagers avoided these zones carefully, knowing that even a single misstep could mean death. Ash fell thick enough to sting their eyes, settle in their hair, and coat their clothes in a gritty layer. By early evening, the group reached a shallow valley with a small spring, one of the few sources of water not contaminated by ash. Matsuo knelt, cupping his hands to drink, feeling the cool water soothe his parched throat. Children followed, laughing quietly for the first time since the morning, though the laughter was nervous and fleeting. The elder cautioned them to drink only enough to sustain themselves, there would be no room for excess in this day of survival. As darkness approached, the villagers gathered near the spring, using the last light to reinforce their temporary shelter with branches and debris. Matsuo worked alongside others, helping erect a makeshift barrier against the ash storm. The elder monitored the volcano constantly, noting shifts in smoke patterns and the distant glow of lava flows. Matsuo realized that nightfall would bring a new set of challenges. Without sunlight, visibility would plummet, and tremors or sudden mudflows could strike with little warning. The air grew thick with heat and smoke. Matsuo's skin prickled, and the taste of ash coated his mouth. He saw the worry etched on the faces of neighbors, women trying to comfort children, men scanning the horizon, and the elder silently calculating risks. There was no time for fear, only action and awareness. Every second counted in these volcanic lands. Evening deepened, and the village's outlines were barely visible beneath layers of ash and smoke. The mountain's constant rumble became more pronounced, vibrating through the valley floor. Matsuo felt the ground beneath him shiver violently, sending a jolt through his body. He steadied himself against a rock, knowing that this tremor could be just the prelude to something far worse. The night promised danger, but also, paradoxically, a chance to survive, to move carefully, adapt, and endure. Matsuo thought about the day behind him, the ash, the tremors, the molten rivers, and the fear. But he also thought of the small moments that had carried him, helping a child across a river, the elder's calm guidance, the fleeting laughter near the spring. In a land ruled by fire and trembling earth, these tiny moments of humanity were as vital as water and shelter. And he knew, somehow, that survival depended on remembering them. Night settled over the volcanic plain, bringing with it a darkness so complete that even the faint glow of the distant lava seemed muted. The ash storm had slowed slightly, but a thin haze still clung to the air, making every breath taste of soot. Matsuo crouched near the makeshift shelter, listening to the constant rumble of the mountain, a sound that penetrated bones and rattled the mind. Sleep was impossible, yet exhaustion weighed heavily on him. The elder moved quietly among the group, checking on each family, ensuring that children were safe and water supplies sufficient. His calm presence was a fragile anchor in the chaos, and Matsuo clung to it like a lifeline. In the flickering light of a small fire, faces were illuminated with anxiety and determination. Conversations were whispers, even laughter felt inappropriate under the looming threat of destruction. Suddenly, the ground shuddered violently, throwing Matsuo to one knee. The tremor lasted only seconds, but the roar from the mountain that followed seemed endless. Trees swayed, rocks tumbled down nearby slopes, and the fire sputtered as ash rained down upon it. Children screamed, clutching parents, and animals whinnied or bleated in panic. Matsuo steadied himself against a rock, heart pounding. Every fiber of his being was attuned to survival, every instinct screamed that the mountain was claiming its day. The elders shouted instructions, guiding the villagers to move to slightly higher ground, a plateau less prone to mudflows and with clearer lines of escape. Matsuo helped lift a small child over a jagged rock, the ash coating his clothes and skin in a gritty gray layer. Every motion was deliberate, every choice critical. One wrong step could lead to an injury or trap them in a path of destruction. As they climbed, Matsuo's eyes caught the fiery river carving its way down the mountainside. Lava glowed with a dangerous beauty, snaking between blackened trees and scorched earth. The heat was tangible even from this distance, radiating outward in waves. He marveled at the raw power of nature, even as fear gripped his chest. Villagers whispered prayers, some old chants passed down through generations, others improvised in desperation. Once on the plateau, they paused to catch their breath. The elder surveyed the landscape, noting the paths that remained relatively safe and marking them mentally for future movement. "The mountain tests us," he said quietly. "It will not forgive mistakes, but it rewards patience and attention." Matsuo nodded, understanding the wisdom in the words. Survival in this land required more than strength, it demanded awareness, endurance, and humility. Around them, the night was eerie and alive. Ash fell like fine sand, settling on faces and clothing. The moon, obscured by smoke, cast a pale glow over the desolate landscape. Matsuo saw shadows moving in the distance, other villagers, animals fleeing, and perhaps the remnants of the forest that still clung to life. Every shape could be a threat or a lifeline, and distinguishing between the two required constant vigilance. Matsuo thought of the homes left behind, the pottery workshops, the quiet streets now buried under ash and lava. He mourned the loss silently but understood that attachment could not dictate action here. The day's journey had been brutal, yet they had survived. Every step, every careful movement, had brought them further from immediate danger. And yet, the mountain loomed, a reminder that survival was temporary, fragile, and never guaranteed. Hours passed slowly as they rested briefly. Matsuo's body ached from exertion and tension, his lungs burned from ash, and his eyes stung constantly. Yet, the plateau offered a brief reprieve, a place to observe, plan, and endure until the next move. He glanced at the elder, whose calm presence seemed unshaken despite the surrounding chaos. Matsuo realized that experience and wisdom were as vital here as courage. By the middle of the night, tremors had become more frequent, punctuating the roar of the volcano like a grim drumbeat. The villagers remained vigilant, taking turns watching the skies and listening to the mountain's warnings. Matsuo stayed alert, muscles coiled and ready to react. Sleep was impossible, but every moment of awareness was life-saving. Here, in the volcanic lands of 12th century Japan, one day could span decades of struggle and lessons, condensed into moments of intense survival. Matsuo understood something profound: the mountain did not hate them, nor did it love them. It simply existed, powerful and indifferent, and life's challenge was to navigate that indifference with caution, respect, and resilience. He resolved to survive the night, knowing that the dawn would bring new dangers, new decisions, and the unrelenting test of existence beneath a living volcano. As the first hints of dawn brushed the ash-laden sky, the landscape took on an eerie, muted glow. The sun, barely visible through the thick smoke and swirling ash, cast pale shadows across the plateau. Matsuo's body ached from hours of tense vigilance, yet the sight of morning, however gray, gave a fragile sense of hope. The village behind them was unrecognizable, roads and homes buried under layers of volcanic debris, and the forest scorched in patches. Life here was fragile, yet human determination pressed forward. The elder gathered the villagers, outlining the next leg of their journey. The plan was simple in theory: move toward the river valley further downstream, a location historically less affected by lava flows and mudslides. The path, however, was treacherous. Small streams, destabilized by tremors and ash, cut across their route. Fallen trees and rocks littered the ground. Every step required vigilance, and Matsuo realized that fatigue was as dangerous as the mountain itself. As they descended from the plateau, the ash thickened, turning the world into a monochrome landscape. Matsuo coughed continuously, wiping the grit from his eyes with a sleeve. Visibility was limited, making each movement slow and careful. The villagers formed a tight line, holding hands or using sticks to probe the uncertain ground ahead. Matsuo felt a strange sense of unity in this forced coordination. Survival depended not only on personal skill but on collective awareness. Along the path, Matsuo saw evidence of the eruption's earlier reach. A small home, likely empty for days, had been consumed by lava on one side, its roof partially collapsed. The remnants of a market stall jutted from the ash, broken pottery scattered across the ground. Matsuo recognized shapes of tools and domestic items, relics of ordinary life erased in moments. He felt a pang of grief, but time allowed little room for sentimentality. Every second counted. The ground shuddered suddenly, throwing Matsuo to his hands and knees. A minor quake, yet enough to remind everyone of the mountain's relentless power. Dust and ash fell from the trees, and a nearby boulder shifted with a low rumble. Villagers froze for a moment, eyes wide with fear, before continuing cautiously. The elder's voice cut through the tension, "Step lightly. Watch the earth. The mountain tests us, always." By mid-morning, the river valley came into view. The river, swollen with ash-laden water from upstream, flowed sluggishly, a dull gray snake cutting through the plain. Matsuo's heart lifted slightly. This stretch of land had historically offered safer passage during eruptions. Yet the river was no sanctuary. The banks were unstable, and the constant tremors threatened sudden landslides. Crossing required care and coordination. Matsuo helped the elderly and children navigate the shifting banks. Logs and rocks were used as bridges, though every makeshift support groaned under weight. The river's murky waters were deceptively strong, one misstep could sweep a person downstream. Around him, villagers whispered prayers, gripping hands and sticks with white-knuckled intensity. Matsuo focused on each movement, his mind a blend of fear, strategy, and adrenaline. Once across, the group paused briefly on a slightly elevated patch of land. Matsuo knelt to catch his breath, feeling the river's cooling influence on the air. Children drank water cautiously, and Matsuo took a moment to drink as well. The brief respite offered a chance to assess the damage, the plateau they had left, the village lost, and the continuous threat that still loomed. Every moment of rest was balanced by vigilance. Complacency could prove fatal. As the day progressed, Matsuo observed the patterns of ash and smoke, learning instinctively which paths were safer. Tremors became more frequent, each one sending vibrations through the riverbanks. The mountain's activity was escalating, reminding all that survival depended on constant adaptation. Matsuo's body ached from exhaustion, yet his mind sharpened. He knew that understanding the rhythms of the land, reading smoke, ash, and tremors, was as vital as physical endurance. By late afternoon, the group reached a sparse grove of hardy trees, offering temporary shelter from the ash and wind. Matsuo rested against a tree trunk, muscles trembling with fatigue, lungs coated with grit. Around him, the villagers huddled, sharing small rations of food and water. The elder moved among them, quietly inspecting for injuries and offering guidance. Matsuo realized that in these volcanic lands, survival was measured not only in steps taken or distance covered, but in awareness, adaptation, and the quiet care extended to others. As dusk approached, the glow from the volcano illuminated the ash-choked sky, painting the world in reds and oranges. The mountain's roar echoed like an unending drum, and tremors rumbled beneath their feet. Matsuo knew the night ahead would demand vigilance, endurance, and courage, and that even small mistakes could have deadly consequences. Yet, amid the terror, there was a strange clarity. Life here was raw, immediate, and beautiful in its resilience. Night descended over the river valley, turning the ash-filled landscape into a dim, shadowed world. The pale light from the volcano painted everything in eerie reds and oranges, and the constant rumble beneath their feet reminded Matsuo that the mountain's fury never rested. The villagers huddled together in the sparse grove, wrapped in blankets and cloths to protect against the fine ash that still fell from the sky. Matsuo crouched near a small fire, its flames flickering weakly against the encroaching darkness. Every sound was magnified in the night, the distant roar of lava, the snapping of branches under shifting rocks, and the whispers of those around him. Sleep was impossible, yet the body demanded rest. Matsuo closed his eyes for a few seconds at a time, then opened them again, alert to the slightest tremor or shift in the wind. The elder moved among the group, inspecting children and the elderly, ensuring that no one wandered too close to unstable ground. His calm presence was their anchor in the chaos, and Matsuo felt a quiet gratitude for it. Around him, villagers murmured prayers and old chants, their voices trembling in the ash-filled night. Every sound, every movement, was a reminder that vigilance could mean the difference between life and death. Suddenly, a violent tremor shook the ground, stronger than any they had felt so far. Matsuo stumbled, clutching a tree for balance, as rocks shifted and small trees swayed dangerously. The air was thick with ash, making it difficult to see or breathe. The children cried out, clinging to their parents, while the elders shouted instructions to keep everyone together. The night had become a battleground, and survival required constant attention. Matsuo realized that the fire offered little protection, the heat from the lava river flowing far below could already be felt in waves. The ash storm reduced visibility to mere meters, and the landscape appeared almost unrecognizable. Even familiar landmarks were hidden beneath layers of gray dust. Every instinct screamed caution, every thought focused on keeping the group together and moving toward safer ground. The villagers slowly began to move again, guided by the elders' experience. Matsuo helped carry a small child, carefully navigating the uneven terrain. Tremors continued intermittently, each one threatening to unbalance them or collapse loose ground beneath their feet. The mountain's wrath was relentless, indifferent to human fear or effort. As they progressed, Matsuo noticed the distant glow of molten lava illuminating the night sky. Rivers of fire snaked down the mountainside, consuming everything in their path. The sight was both terrifying and mesmerizing, a reminder of the raw, unstoppable power of nature. Around him, villagers whispered in awe and fear, moving cautiously to avoid falling debris or unstable ground. By midnight, the group reached a slightly more stable section of the river valley. Here, the ash was thinner, and small pockets of firmer ground allowed them to rest momentarily. Matsuo crouched behind a rock, gasping for clean air whenever he could, and looked around at the exhausted faces of those who had survived the day. Every person carried signs of the struggle, soot-streaked skin, torn clothing, and tired, fearful eyes. Yet, despite the terror, there was also a quiet resilience that spoke volumes about the human will to survive. The elder gave Matsuo a reassuring nod, signaling that they would wait here for a short while. It was a temporary reprieve, but in this volcanic land, even brief moments of stability were precious. Matsuo reflected on the day so far, the tremors, the ash, the lava, and the small victories of keeping children and neighbors safe. Each moment had been a delicate balance between action and awareness, risk and caution. Matsuo realized that survival here was not a battle to be won in grand gestures, but a series of small, careful decisions. Every choice, where to step, how to breathe, when to move, whom to help, carried immense weight. And as he watched the glowing rivers of molten rock from a distance, he understood that the mountain's fury was not personal. It simply existed, and life's challenge was to navigate that existence with awareness, respect, and endurance. Hours stretched into the early morning, and Matsuo remained alert, aware that the night was far from over. The mountain had tested them through the day, and now, under the ash-filled darkness, it continued its relentless trial. Yet, amid fear and exhaustion, there was a sense of unity, of shared struggle, and of quiet determination. This was life in the volcanic lands of 12th century Japan, harsh, unforgiving, and yet profoundly alive. As the first gray light of dawn crept over the ash-choked valley, the world seemed almost unreal. Matsuo's eyes stung from the constant exposure to ash, his skin coated in a fine gray layer that made him feel both heavy and gritty. The river valley, once a place of tentative safety, now bore scars from the night's tremors, small landslides, shifted boulders, and debris scattered across the paths. Every step forward required careful attention, for even a misjudged move could lead to injury or separation from the group. The elder gathered the villagers quietly, pointing out paths that appeared slightly more stable and free from deep ash accumulation. "We must move steadily," he said, voice calm yet firm. "The mountain tests our resolve, but it will also reward vigilance. Keep close, and trust the path." Matsuo nodded, understanding that experience and careful observation were as vital as physical endurance in these volcanic lands. As they moved through the valley, the mountain's glow intensified with the rising sun, casting an ominous orange light over the desolate landscape. Rivers of molten lava snaked downward, carving glowing channels through blackened earth and forest. The air was thick with the sulfurous scent of smoke and the fine grit of ash. Breathing was laborious, each inhale filling the lungs with irritants that burned and made vision blur. Yet, the group pressed on, understanding that the only option was to keep moving. Matsuo noticed signs of the eruption's recent fury along the path: collapsed huts, the charred skeletons of trees, and stones blackened by heat. Each scene told a story of destruction, reminding him how fragile human life and settlement were against the unstoppable force of the volcano. The villagers whispered quietly, sharing stories of relatives lost in previous eruptions or narrowly surviving similar disasters. Fear was ever present, but it was tempered by a grim determination to endure. Around mid-morning, the path narrowed into a rocky gorge. The river, swollen with ash and debris, flowed beside them, its current strong and unpredictable. Crossing would require careful coordination and balance. Matsuo helped guide a small child across a makeshift bridge of logs, while other villagers tested the ground for stability. Every movement was cautious. One slip could mean being swept into the churning river below. Once across, Matsuo took a brief moment to rest, leaning against a large boulder. The exhaustion of the past 2 days pressed heavily on his body, aching muscles, raw lungs, and sunburned skin coated with ash. Yet, he remained alert, scanning the shifting slopes for tremors, falling rocks, or new lava flows. Here, even a few moments of inattention could spell disaster. The elders signaled for them to continue, and Matsuo helped distribute small rations of food and water. Sustenance was critical, even in this perilous environment. Dehydration or hunger could slow reaction times, making the difference between life and death. As they moved, the group maintained a disciplined formation, with experienced villagers at the front to scout and at the back to ensure no one fell behind. Matsuo found himself in the middle, a position that required constant awareness, both of the people ahead and the unstable ground beneath his feet. By midday, the ash had begun to settle slightly, but the threat of sudden tremors and lava flows remained constant. Matsuo's mind was a careful balance of observation, strategy, and endurance. He noticed subtle changes: the angle of smoke rising from fissures in the mountainside, the pattern of cracks forming in the ground, and the faint heat radiating from the distant lava channels. Each observation was a guide for survival, a map of where to step and where to avoid. In the distance, they spotted signs of another village, partially destroyed but seemingly offering safer terrain for the immediate future. The elder led the group toward it cautiously, aware that the mountain's fury could shift unpredictably at any moment. Matsuo's heart pounded with a mixture of hope and anxiety. Each new landmark was a potential refuge, but also a reminder of the destruction that had passed and the danger that still lingered. By late afternoon, the group reached the outskirts of the village. Smoke rose from several smoldering homes, and debris littered the streets. Yet there were pockets of stability, structures that had survived, shallow wells that offered fresh water, and areas of open ground suitable for temporary shelter. Matsuo felt a flicker of relief, tempered by the understanding that the mountain's threat was far from over. Survival was temporary, and vigilance was eternal. The village, though scarred and battered by the eruption, offered a rare sense of relative safety. Matsuo and the group moved carefully among the ash-covered streets, avoiding collapsed roofs and unstable structures. The air was thick with the lingering scent of smoke and sulfur, and each breath reminded them that they were still in the grip of the mountain's fury. Yet, for the first time in what felt like an eternity, there was a possibility of temporary shelter. The elder guided them to a cluster of partially intact homes near the center of the village. Matsuo helped families settle into the structures, using whatever debris could be repurposed to reinforce doors and block ash from blowing inside. The walls were cracked, floors unstable, but for now, they were better than standing exposed in the open ash-filled valley. Children clung to parents, their small faces streaked with soot, eyes wide with both fear and curiosity. Matsuo set down his meager belongings, rubbing the ash from his hands. The constant work of moving, helping, and staying alert had left him drained, yet he knew the respite would be brief. The mountain did not sleep, and tremors continued at irregular intervals, rattling the fragile structures and sending clouds of ash swirling through broken windows. Even here, the illusion of safety was temporary, a fragile bubble in a world ruled by unpredictable natural forces. Around midday, the elder gathered the villagers in the main square of the village, now little more than a shadow of its former self. He spoke in measured tones, sharing observations from the morning and strategies for maintaining safety over the next hours. Matsuo listened carefully, absorbing every word. The advice was simple: stay low, avoid unstable ground, monitor changes in smoke and heat, and keep the group together. Yet even simple instructions carried immense weight when each moment could bring catastrophe. Matsuo spent the early afternoon assisting neighbors, moving fragile items, and reinforcing temporary shelters. Every motion was deliberate, mindful of the unstable floors and shifting ash. Children were kept close, small hands gripping adult sleeves as they navigated the treacherous environment. The village was a ghostly place, littered with reminders of lives interrupted, the skeletal remains of carts, broken pottery, and scorched fragments of clothing. Matsuo's heart ached at the scenes, yet he knew that survival demanded attention, not grief. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, the mountain's glow intensified, casting a deep orange hue over the village. Tremors grew more frequent, stronger, rattling walls and sending loose ash into the air. The elder signaled everyone to move toward the village outskirts, to areas with firmer ground and fewer collapsing structures. Matsuo helped carry supplies and children, moving cautiously over debris-strewn streets. Every step was a calculation, balancing speed with caution. By late afternoon, the group had established a temporary camp just beyond the village. Matsuo knelt to drink water from a small stream, the ash mixing with the river's surface to create a grayish, gritty slurry. Children played quietly nearby, while adults used the brief reprieve to eat small rations and rest aching muscles. Despite the exhaustion, the group remained vigilant, aware that the mountain's threat could escalate at any moment. Matsuo observed the distant slopes, where lava flowed in glowing rivers, and smoke billowed into the sky. The power of the mountain was overwhelming, yet amidst the fear, he noticed a strange beauty, the contrast of fire and ash, the resilience of trees clinging to the hillsides, and the determination of his fellow villagers. Survival was as much a matter of mental endurance as physical effort. As evening approached, Matsuo and the group prepared for another night exposed to the elements and the mountain's relentless activity. The ash storm had lessened slightly, but tremors remained constant, vibrating through the earth and underfoot. The elders' guidance provided structure, but each person knew that their fate rested on careful observation, quick reactions, and the strength to endure whatever the mountain might unleash next. Night fell once again over the volcanic landscape, draping the valley in darkness punctuated by the red-orange glow of lava rivers. Matsuo crouched near the temporary camp outside the ruined village, eyes straining through the ash-filled night. Even in darkness, the mountain's presence was undeniable, a constant, vibrating force beneath their feet, a glowing threat in the distance, a reminder that survival here was never guaranteed. The villagers arranged themselves cautiously, children and elderly at the center, younger adults forming a protective perimeter. Matsuo took a position near the edge, scanning the surroundings for hazards, unstable ground, falling debris, or sudden tremors. The ash-coated air made each breath a challenge, and the heat radiating from the molten lava below pressed heavily against their bodies. Yet vigilance was the only shield they had. Every few minutes, the earth shuddered violently. The tremors varied, some mild, barely enough to unbalance a person, others forceful, shaking rocks loose from the slopes above and rattling the temporary shelters. Matsuo's hands ached from clutching the ground for balance, his lungs burned from inhaling ash, and yet every nerve was alert. One misstep, one moment of inattention, could mean disaster. The elder moved among the villagers, quietly assessing their condition and offering guidance. His calm demeanor was vital in maintaining order and focus. "Watch the earth," he whispered. "Do not panic. Each moment counts. Move only when necessary." Matsuo absorbed every word, understanding that experience and awareness were as important as courage and endurance in these lands. Around midnight, a distant roar echoed from the mountain, louder and more menacing than any before. The ground beneath them trembled violently, throwing loose rocks into the camp. Children cried out, gripping their parents, while adults steadied themselves and shouted instructions to maintain cohesion. Matsuo helped guide a group of villagers to firmer ground, the heat from the glowing lava brushing against his skin even at this distance. As the tremors subsided briefly, Matsuo took stock of the surroundings. The lava had shifted subtly, carving new channels down the slopes. Smoke plumes thickened, and ash continued to fall, coating the camp in a gritty, suffocating layer. Matsuo adjusted the makeshift shelters, reinforcing weak points with debris and helping move small bundles of food and water closer to safety. Each action was calculated, each decision deliberate. Hours passed in tense vigilance. The mountain continued its relentless display of power, glowing fissures, intermittent tremors, and plumes of ash that blotted out starlight. Matsuo noted subtle cues in the air, shifts in smoke direction, changes in ash density, the trembling of distant trees. These observations guided each movement, helping predict minor hazards before they became catastrophic. Matsuo thought of the villages left behind, the streets buried under ash, the homes consumed by lava, and the people who had not survived. Grief was present, but it had to be suppressed. Survival depended on focus and action. Each breath, each careful step, each cautious decision was a defiance of the mountain's indiscriminate force. By early morning, just before the pale light of dawn, Matsuo and the villagers had maintained their fragile position on slightly elevated ground. Tremors were intermittent but strong, and the lava rivers continued to glow menacingly in the distance. Yet, despite exhaustion and fear, there was a small sense of accomplishment. They had survived another night. In these volcanic lands of 12th century Japan, each surviving day was a victory against a world ruled by fire and trembling earth. Matsuo's mind remained alert even as the first hints of sunlight painted the ash-filled sky. The day ahead would bring new challenges, crossing unstable terrain, navigating ash-laden rivers, and avoiding sudden lava flows, but he felt a quiet determination. Survival here was never guaranteed, yet it was achieved moment by moment, decision by decision, breath by breath. The dawn light revealed the valley in muted shades of gray and orange, the landscape sculpted by both destruction and resilience. Matsuo rose stiffly, muscles sore from the previous night's vigilance. Around him, villagers began their cautious morning routine, checking the stability of shelters, gathering sparse provisions, and scanning the distant slopes for signs of increased volcanic activity. The elder remained a steady presence, moving from group to group with measured steps and calm instructions. The day promised little comfort. Ash still coated the ground in a thick layer, hiding cracks, loose rocks, and unstable soil. Every step required caution. A misjudged move could result in twisted ankles or worse, sending someone into a precarious path toward lava or mud flows. Matsuo adjusted the sack slung over his shoulder, containing the few belongings and rations he had managed to carry. Each item was precious, yet nothing compared to the value of vigilance and presence of mind. The group moved slowly through the valley, taking advantage of slightly firmer terrain near the edges of the river. The river itself was gray with volcanic sediment, its current swollen and unpredictable. Crossing points were few, and each one required careful coordination. Matsuo helped guide a small child over a narrow, makeshift bridge of logs, balancing the need for speed against the risk of collapse. The elder constantly scanned the mountain, noting the changing shape of smoke plumes, subtle shifts in heat, and patterns of ash dispersal. Matsuo followed his lead, learning instinctively to read the signals of the mountain. Tremors remained frequent, some subtle enough to be ignored, others strong enough to make rocks tumble down nearby slopes. Even experienced villagers treated each vibration with caution. Complacency could be deadly. By mid-morning, the group reached a ridge overlooking a partially destroyed village. Matsuo recognized the signs of previous lava flows, scorched earth, blackened trees, and remnants of collapsed buildings. A few structures remained intact, offering potential shelter, but the risk of further eruptions and unstable ground was ever present. The elder guided the group past the most dangerous areas, carefully choosing paths that minimized exposure to falling ash, shifting ground, and possible lava channels. Matsuo felt both awe and fear as he observed the molten rivers winding their way down the mountainside. The heat radiated across the distance, even affecting their temporary rest spots. Smoke filled the air, sometimes thick enough to obscure vision entirely, forcing the villagers to halt and wait until conditions improved. Children clung to adults, their small bodies trembling from exhaustion and the constant tension of survival. The elder paused the group briefly in a small grove of surviving pines, using the trees as a temporary shield against falling ash and wind-driven debris. Matsuo crouched, taking small sips of water while scanning the surroundings. The mountain continued to rumble, a low, constant vibration underfoot, and distant roars reminded them that the day's challenges were only beginning. During the brief rest, Matsuo observed his fellow villagers. Faces etched with fear and fatigue, yet eyes holding determination and mutual support. Every step they had taken together, every careful decision, had allowed them to survive the night and morning. Here, amid devastation and constant threat, human resilience was as vital as any physical strength. By early afternoon, the group continued toward another stretch of relatively stable ground. The ash had begun to settle in some areas, revealing partially buried paths and roads. Yet the landscape remained treacherous. Matsuo's mind was alert, cataloging hazards, loose stones, hidden fissures, and uneven surfaces. One misstep could lead to injury or separation, which in these lands could be fatal. The mountain's glow intensified with the sun high overhead, illuminating the ash-choked valley in an eerie orange-red hue. Tremors remained frequent, and Matsuo could feel the ground shift beneath him with each passing moment. Survival was measured in observation, patience, and endurance, and every breath, every careful step, brought them closer to safety. As the afternoon stretched on, Matsuo realized that each day in the volcanic lands of 12th century Japan was a test of not only physical resilience but mental acuity. The mountain was indifferent to fear, grief, or hope. Life here was a constant negotiation with forces beyond human control. And yet, the villagers moved forward, step by careful step, embracing both the terror and the fragile beauty of survival. By late afternoon, the villagers approached a stretch of open plains, a slight relief from the steep slopes and rocky gorges of the river valley. Matsuo noticed how the ground, though still coated in ash, appeared more stable here. Yet the threat of the mountain remained omnipresent. From this vantage point, they could see multiple streams of molten lava winding down the distant slopes, their glowing paths a constant reminder of the destruction that lay just beyond reach. The elder instructed the group to maintain a tight formation. Matsuo moved near the center, keeping a watchful eye on both the children and the terrain. Even in this relatively stable area, tremors continued, shaking the ash beneath their feet and sending clouds of fine dust into the air. Matsuo coughed, wiping the residue from his eyes, and reminded himself that the mountain's activity was unpredictable, each step forward required vigilance. As they crossed the plain, Matsuo observed the damage the eruption had caused to the nearby forests. Trees were blackened or uprooted, their branches twisted by the intense heat and tremors. Occasionally, the wind carried the scent of burning wood and sulfur, making breathing laborious. Yet amidst the destruction, Matsuo noticed signs of resilience, small shoots of grass emerging from the ash, hardy plants clinging to life, and scattered wildlife cautiously returning to the land. Even in a world dominated by catastrophe, life persisted. Midway across the plains, the ground trembled violently beneath them, a strong jolt that nearly knocked Matsuo off his feet. Loose rocks shifted, and a faint cloud of ash rose from a fissure in the earth nearby. The villagers froze, instinctively holding hands or grasping whatever support was available. The elder's voice rang out calmly but firmly, "Steady. Do not rush. Observe the earth, and follow its cues." Matsuo felt his pulse quicken as he adjusted his footing, moving cautiously to avoid the fissures opening in unpredictable patterns. After several tense minutes, the tremor subsided, leaving only the distant rumble of the volcano and the faint, crackling glow of lava rivers. Matsuo allowed himself a brief moment to breathe and scan the horizon. In the distance, a partially intact village appeared, nestled near the edge of the plains. Its position suggested slightly safer terrain, away from the main lava flows and immediate impact zones. The elders signaled the group to move cautiously toward it, every step deliberate and measured. Along the way, Matsuo helped carry supplies, supported elderly villagers, and kept children close. The ash made each step slippery and treacherous, while hidden cracks in the earth threatened sudden injury. The villagers' faces were a mix of exhaustion and determination, their movements careful yet purposeful. Matsuo reflected on the fragility of life here. Every day survived was a testament to resilience, observation, and the small acts of support exchanged among the group. By early evening, they reached the outskirts of the village. Smoke rose from damaged structures, and streets were littered with debris, but patches of solid ground and intact buildings offered hope for temporary refuge. The elder led the group in selecting the safest spots for shelter, prioritizing areas on slightly elevated ground and away from potentially unstable structures. Matsuo assisted in reinforcing makeshift barriers, ensuring that even this temporary haven could withstand minor tremors and ashfall. As night fell, the glow from the distant lava painted the village in surreal shades of red and orange. Tremors continued, and the ash storm returned intermittently, coating everything in fine gray dust. Matsuo crouched near a fire, exhausted but vigilant. The day had been brutal, yet survival had been achieved through careful observation, communal support, and unwavering attention to the mountain signals. In the quiet moments before sleep, or the closest thing to it, Matsuo contemplated the day's journey. The landscape was unforgiving, the threats constant, and yet he felt a deep connection to the land and its people. The volcanic plains of 12th century Japan demanded endurance, respect, and resilience. And through every tremor, ash storm, and glowing river of lava, life persisted, fragile but unyielding. Night in the village was restless. The ash-filled air made sleep nearly impossible, and the distant rumble of the volcano reminded Matsuo that danger never rested. The villagers huddled together, children clinging to parents, while adults maintained a constant watch for signs of new tremors or sudden shifts in lava flows. Matsuo took his turn near the perimeter, scanning the darkened landscape, muscles tense, every sense heightened. A low vibration ran through the ground, subtle at first but growing steadily into a forceful tremor. Matsuo steadied himself, alerting those nearby to brace. Loose stones clattered across the ground, and the fire flickered, sending sparks into the ashen air. The elder's calm voice directed them toward firmer ground, signaling a temporary retreat from the most unstable areas. Panic was carefully suppressed, survival depended on discipline and measured action. As the tremor subsided, Matsuo noted the changes it had wrought. Small fissures opened in the earth, streams of ash slid down minor slopes, and debris shifted across the streets. The villagers quickly assessed the safety of their temporary shelters, reinforcing weak points with debris and salvaged materials. Matsuo assisted a mother in securing a fragile doorway while helping a child remain calm amidst the chaos. Each action was deliberate, each motion critical to preventing injury or worse. Hours passed in tense vigilance. The distant glow of lava continued to illuminate the sky, a reminder of the ongoing threat. The ash storm, though diminished, left a fine layer of grit covering everything, making movement slippery and vision impaired. Matsuo observed subtle shifts in smoke and heat patterns, learning instinctively to read the mountain signals. Even the slightest deviation in these natural cues could indicate a new eruption or unstable ground ahead. By early morning, the tremors lessened temporarily, providing a brief window of relative calm. The villagers used this time to check supplies, drink water, and rest aching muscles. Matsuo crouched behind a boulder, rubbing soot from his eyes, and allowed himself a short reprieve. Yet the calm was deceptive. Every experienced villager knew that the mountain's next move could be sudden and violent. As dawn approached, the group prepared to move again. The elder outlined the safest route, a winding path along slightly elevated terrain, avoiding newly formed fissures and the lava's path. Matsuo helped guide families along this route, navigating the ash-coated ground carefully. The children's small hands gripped his arm tightly, their trust in him a heavy responsibility. Each step was a careful balance of speed and caution. The path led through a series of rocky outcrops, partially shielded from falling ash and debris. Matsuo noted every unstable rock, every hidden fissure, and instructed the younger villagers on the safest way to step. Tremors continued intermittently, testing their balance and attention. The elder remained ahead, pointing out subtle signs in the smoke and ground that indicated areas of relative safety. Matsuo absorbed the guidance, learning how to anticipate the mountain's shifts before they became immediate threats. By mid-morning, they reached a small grove of hardy trees, offering shelter from the wind and drifting ash. Matsuo knelt, taking small sips of water while keeping his eyes on the distant mountain. The villagers rested briefly, sharing meager rations and assessing the condition of the group. Exhaustion was evident, faces streaked with ash, eyes rimmed with fatigue, but determination remained strong. The fragile bond of survival held them together. The elder reminded everyone that the day ahead would bring new challenges. Lava flows could change course, tremors could open fissures underfoot, and ash storms could reduce visibility to near zero. Matsuo nodded, understanding that endurance was measured not just by physical strength, but by vigilance, adaptability, and the careful attention to the signals of the land. Life in the volcanic plains of 12th century Japan was unforgiving, yet the villagers persisted, step by step, breath by breath. The morning sun cast an orange-red hue across the ash-covered plains, illuminating the desolate landscape. Matsuo and the villagers began their cautious trek toward higher ground, following the elder's guidance. Each step was deliberate, navigating the ash-laden soil and avoiding the newly formed fissures that crisscrossed the terrain. The roar of the distant volcano was constant, a low, unrelenting reminder that the mountain could unleash destruction at any moment. Matsuo helped guide a group of children along the path, their small hands gripping his arm tightly. Tremors shook the earth beneath them intermittently, forcing the villagers to pause, steady themselves, and proceed with caution. Even minor quakes could destabilize loose rocks, create new fissures, or trigger small ash avalanches. Every moment demanded awareness, patience, and adaptability. As they progressed, Matsuo noticed the ash settling into drifts, forming deceptive slopes and concealing potential hazards. The ground was uneven, and one misstep could lead to injury or separation from the group. The elder constantly scanned the mountain, reading smoke plumes, heat, and subtle changes in ash patterns to anticipate danger. Matsuo absorbed every detail, learning to interpret the mountain's signals as a guide for survival. Mid-morning brought them to a narrow gorge, a bottleneck that forced the villagers to move single file. The river beside it had risen slightly, carrying ash and debris in a sluggish, gray current. Crossing required careful coordination. Matsuo assisted the elderly, supporting them as they navigated slippery stones, while ensuring children maintained their balance. The tension was palpable, one slip could cascade into disaster for those behind. Once across, the group paused briefly in a small clearing. Matsuo crouched to catch his breath, wiping soot from his eyes. The landscape bore scars of previous eruptions, blackened trees, collapsed huts, and shallow trenches filled with ash and debris. Matsuo felt a pang of grief for the lives disrupted and lost, yet he knew that dwelling on the past was a luxury they could not afford. Survival demanded focus on the path ahead. The elder guided them toward a grove of hardy trees, offering temporary shelter from the constant ashfall. Matsuo helped reinforce makeshift barriers around the area, shielding families from wind-blown debris. Children huddled close to their parents, their small faces streaked with ash and exhaustion. The elders reminded the villagers that even in moments of relative calm, vigilance was critical. The mountain's next movement could be sudden and catastrophic. By early afternoon, Matsuo and the group resumed their journey, moving along a ridge that offered slightly firmer ground and a better vantage point to anticipate volcanic activity. Tremors continued, some subtle, others more pronounced, shaking rocks loose from the slopes and sending small avalanches cascading down. Matsuo adjusted his pace, watching for unstable terrain and guiding the less experienced villagers safely along the path. The sun climbed higher, and the mountain's glow intensified, casting a surreal light over the ashen landscape. Matsuo marveled at the raw power surrounding them, the rivers of molten lava, the clouds of smoke rising into the sky, and the continuous, vibrating presence of the volcano. Each step forward was an act of resilience, a defiance of nature's indifferent fury. By late afternoon, the group reached another small village, partially intact and offering a chance for temporary refuge. Matsuo helped the villagers settle, reinforcing structures and preparing for the inevitable tremors that might follow. As the sun dipped lower, the glow of lava reflected against the ash-filled sky, painting the world in harsh, otherworldly colors. Survival here required not just endurance but constant vigilance, observation, and care for one another. Night fell once more over the partially intact village, blanketing the ash-laden landscape in darkness punctuated by the glowing rivers of molten lava. Matsuo crouched near a small fire, the flickering flames casting shadows across soot-streaked faces. The villagers huddled together, children at the center, adults forming a protective perimeter. Even in the relative shelter of the village, danger was constant. Tremors shook the earth at irregular intervals, and ash drifted through broken windows and gaps in walls. Matsuo took his turn on watch, scanning the darkened surroundings for signs of danger. Every sound was amplified in the eerie stillness, the distant roar of the volcano, the snapping of weak beams, and the whispers of children seeking comfort. Sleep was impossible, yet vigilance was non-negotiable. The night demanded alertness and endurance. Suddenly, a strong tremor shook the village, throwing loose debris to the ground. Matsuo steadied himself, alerting those nearby to brace. The fire flickered violently, sending sparks into the ash-choked air. Children screamed briefly, clinging to parents, while the adults guided them to safer positions. The elder's voice rang out, calm and authoritative, "Do not panic. Move with care. Observe the ground." After the tremor subsided, Matsuo assisted in reinforcing weakened structures and clearing small rocks and ash from pathways. Every action was deliberate, aimed at maintaining stability in a world where the mountain's fury could strike without warning. He helped carry a small child to a more secure corner of the shelter while guiding others away from unstable walls. Survival demanded constant attention, and complacency could be fatal. Hours passed with intermittent tremors, each one a reminder of the ever-present threat. The glow of lava illuminated the village through gaps in the roof and walls, casting an otherworldly light on the faces of the exhausted villagers. Matsuo observed how the elder read subtle cues in smoke, heat, and ash patterns to anticipate potential hazards. Matsuo absorbed these lessons, learning that survival was as much about observation and understanding as physical endurance. By early morning, the tremors lessened slightly, providing a brief window of relative calm. The villagers used this time to rest, drink water, and share meager rations of food. Matsuo crouched against a boulder, exhausted but alert, reflecting on the days of survival. Each moment of respite was temporary, yet critical for maintaining the strength and focus necessary for the journey ahead. As dawn broke, the elder prepared the group to move again. The safest path led toward higher ground, away from the lava flows and unstable plains below. Matsuo helped guide families along the route, carefully navigating ash-covered slopes and rocky outcrops. Tremors continued intermittently, testing their balance and attention at every step. Every movement was a balance between caution and progress, each decision crucial for survival. By mid-morning, the group reached a small ridge overlooking another stretch of volcanic plains. Matsuo noted the changes in the landscape, new fissures, shifts in lava paths, and altered ash patterns. The mountain's activity remained unpredictable, but careful observation allowed the elder and Matsuo to guide the villagers safely. The children, despite exhaustion, clung to their parents and helpers, relying on vigilance and experience to navigate the treacherous terrain. The afternoon brought a temporary lull, offering a chance to rest briefly in the sparse shade of resilient trees. Matsuo crouched to drink water and wipe ash from his eyes, reflecting on the delicate balance of life in these volcanic lands. Survival depended on observation, adaptation, endurance, and the small acts of care exchanged among the villagers. Even in a world dominated by fire and trembling earth, human resilience persisted. As evening approached, the glow from the distant lava intensified, painting the valley in shades of red and orange. Matsuo prepared for another night of vigilance, knowing that the mountain would continue to test their endurance. Each tremor, ashfall, and glowing river of molten rock was a reminder that life here was fragile, yet every moment survived was a triumph of resilience and careful attention. The early hours of the night were tense. Matsuo crouched near a makeshift shelter, muscles aching from the day's relentless march and the constant vigilance required. The ash-filled air made every breath laborious, but even in exhaustion, he remained alert. The distant rumble of the volcano was ever present, a low, vibrating force beneath their feet that never ceased, a reminder that danger could strike at any moment. The villagers huddled together, children in the center, adults on the periphery, forming a protective barrier. The elder moved slowly among them, assessing their condition, offering guidance, and checking for signs of fatigue or injury. Every action was deliberate. In these lands, even small mistakes could prove fatal. Matsuo noted how experience allowed the elder to read subtle changes in the environment, the angle of smoke, the density of ash, and vibrations in the ground, to anticipate hazards before they became threats. Suddenly, a tremor shook the village violently, throwing loose debris to the ground. Matsuo steadied himself, alerting those nearby to brace. Children screamed, clinging to their parents, while adults carefully guided them to safer positions. The elder's calm voice rang out, "Observe. Move deliberately. Protect one another." Matsuo followed instinctively, helping to reinforce the shelter and moving those at risk to firmer ground. After the tremor subsided, Matsuo noticed small fissures forming in the earth nearby, as if the mountain itself were breathing and reshaping the landscape with each quiver. He assisted in clearing loose ash and rocks from the narrow pathways, ensuring that the group could move safely if necessary. Even minor adjustments to their position or shelters could prevent injuries or worse in this unpredictable environment. Hours passed with intermittent tremors and the persistent glow of lava rivers in the distance. Matsuo observed the children, exhausted yet resilient, trusting the adults to guide them safely. The villagers' shared vigilance created a fragile network of survival, each individual's attention contributing to the group's collective endurance. Matsuo realized that life in these volcanic lands demanded constant cooperation, as even the strongest alone could not withstand the mountain's fury. By early morning, a brief lull in the tremors allowed the villagers a moment of respite. Matsuo crouched beside a small water source, sipping cautiously and wiping ash from his face. The landscape was eerily quiet, save for the distant rumble of the volcano and the faint hiss of lava channels in the distance. Even in moments of calm, the mountain's presence was undeniable, a reminder that their survival depended on vigilance as much as endurance. As dawn broke, the elder prepared the group to move again toward slightly higher ground. Matsuo assisted families, guiding children along the treacherous ash-covered slopes. Tremors continued, some subtle, others more pronounced, challenging balance and attention. Every step required observation, cracks in the ground, shifting ash patterns, and subtle changes in smoke or heat could indicate danger. By mid-morning, the group reached a ridge offering a vantage point over the surrounding plains. Matsuo observed the patterns of lava flows below, rivers of molten rock snaking unpredictably through the landscape. Trees clung stubbornly to life on nearby slopes, their resilience inspiring even amidst devastation. Matsuo reflected on the delicate balance between destruction and survival, how the mountain's fury could obliterate in moments, yet life persisted stubbornly in small, fragile ways. As the afternoon sun climbed high, Matsuo and the villagers continued along the ridge, moving with caution and deliberation. Tremors and ashfalls persisted, and each minor hazard demanded immediate attention. Every careful step, every shared instruction, every act of assistance contributed to their ongoing survival. Here, life was measured in patience, observation, and the unwavering determination to endure the harshest conditions imaginable. By late afternoon, the ridge began to slope downward toward a small valley, offering a potential route to temporary safety. Matsuo led a careful watch, helping the villagers navigate the ash-covered slopes and avoiding hidden fissures that could open without warning. The glow of lava rivers illuminated the distance, painting the valley in hues of orange and red that flickered like fire across the ash-choked landscape. The elder signaled a brief pause, allowing the villagers to catch their breath and assess the terrain ahead. Matsuo crouched beside a group of children, helping them remove ash from their eyes and clothing. The mountain's tremors continued intermittently, vibrating through the ground and sending small stones tumbling down the slopes. Even in moments of rest, vigilance was essential. The mountain's wrath could strike without notice. As they continued, Matsuo noticed subtle changes in the air, a faint sulfurous scent, a slight increase in heat, and shifts in ash density, all signs that the volcano was becoming more active. He shared these observations quietly with the elder, who nodded and adjusted their path accordingly. Experience, intuition, and careful observation were their greatest allies in this unforgiving land. Midway through the descent, a sudden tremor shook the ridge violently. Matsuo grabbed a nearby rock for support, steadying himself as loose stones slid beneath his feet. Children screamed briefly, and adults quickly guided them to safer footing. The elder's calm instructions helped maintain order. Do not panic. Move deliberately. Observe the ground. Each movement was precise, deliberate, a dance with the unpredictable power of the mountain. Once the immediate danger subsided, the villagers resumed their cautious descent. Matsuo helped reinforce weak spots along the path, using fallen branches and debris to create makeshift handholds and barriers. The children clung tightly to their parents and helpers, learning to trust not only their guidance but their own instincts. In these volcanic lands, survival demanded constant attention to the smallest details of the environment. By early evening, they reached a relatively stable plateau, offering a temporary respite from the constantly shifting terrain. Matsuo crouched beside the remaining water sources, sharing what little supplies they had and helping the villagers settle in. The ash-coated ground was uneven, but firmer than the slopes above. Tremors continued, though less frequent, and the distant glow of lava provided both a reminder of danger and a faint source of light. As night fell, Matsuo helped the villagers prepare makeshift shelters using whatever materials were available: ash-dusted cloth, salvaged wooden beams, and debris from partially intact structures. Children huddled at the center, seeking comfort in the presence of adults. Even in exhaustion, every individual remained alert. The mountain's fury was never predictable, and safety was always temporary. During the night, tremors rattled the plateau intermittently. Matsuo remained vigilant, adjusting barriers, checking the group's positioning, and observing changes in the distant lava flows. The elder moved among the villagers, offering guidance and reassurance. Matsuo reflected on the day's events. Each step, each careful movement, and each act of support had been crucial to survival. In this land dominated by fire and trembling earth, endurance, observation, and communal effort were their only defenses. By the early hours before dawn, the group rested briefly, though sleep was shallow and interrupted. Matsuo watched the glowing rivers of lava in the distance, a constant reminder that the mountain's power was indifferent to human struggle. Yet, in the midst of danger and exhaustion, the villagers' shared resilience persisted, a fragile, tenacious defiance against nature's relentless force. Dawn broke over the ash-choked plateau, painting the landscape in a muted orange glow that mixed eerily with the persistent haze. Matsuo rose stiffly, muscles sore from the night's vigilance and the previous day's march. The villagers gathered, tired but alert, understanding that the mountain's threat never ceased, and that each day survived was a victory in itself. The elder outlined the route for the day, pointing to a path that led along a higher ridge, away from the lava rivers and unstable valleys below. Matsuo helped distribute the remaining water and rations, reminding children and elders to pace themselves. The ash-covered ground made each step treacherous, and even small tremors could send someone sliding into a fissure or debris-strewn slope. Every movement demanded caution and attention. As they began moving, Matsuo observed the terrain carefully. Ash drifts covered subtle fissures, and loose rocks were hidden beneath the gray coating of volcanic dust. The mountain's rumble grew intermittently louder, hinting at a shift in activity. Matsuo whispered observations to the elder, who nodded and subtly adjusted the pace and direction of the group. Experience, awareness, and quick decision-making were as vital as physical strength in these volcanic lands. Mid-morning, the path narrowed along a steep ridge. Matsuo crouched to guide the children and elderly, helping them maintain balance while avoiding unstable edges. Tremors shook the ridge intermittently, forcing everyone to brace and proceed with caution. Loose rocks slid beneath their feet, and small clouds of ash rose with each tremor. Every step was measured, deliberate, and necessary to avoid disaster. During a brief pause, Matsuo looked back at the path they had traveled. The valley below bore the scars of the eruption, collapsed structures, scorched trees, and rivers of blackened rock. Lava continued to glow ominously, snaking through the terrain, while smoke and ash billowed from fissures. Matsuo felt a mixture of awe and dread, understanding the mountain's overwhelming power and the fragility of human life in its shadow. By midday, the group reached a narrow outcrop overlooking a partially intact village. The elder directed them along safer ground, avoiding areas where recent tremors had destabilized the earth. Matsuo assisted in carrying supplies and supporting those struggling with the uneven terrain. The children clung to him tightly, their trust both a burden and a responsibility. Each careful step forward was a negotiation with the unpredictable forces of nature. As the afternoon progressed, the mountain's activity intensified. Lava rivers shifted slightly, smoke plumes thickened, and tremors became more frequent. Matsuo guided the group across a small open plain, helping to stabilize footing for children and elders. The elders' calm instructions, observe, proceed deliberately, and maintain cohesion, were critical in ensuring that no one was lost or injured. By late afternoon, the group reached a grove of resilient trees, offering temporary shelter from ash and wind. Matsuo assisted in reinforcing makeshift shelters, creating barriers from fallen branches and debris. The villagers rested briefly, taking small sips of water and sharing meager rations. Despite exhaustion, everyone remained alert, understanding that the mountain's next move could come at any moment. As evening approached, the glow from distant lava rivers painted the valley in surreal red and orange hues. Tremors continued, subtle but constant, reminding the villagers that safety was temporary. Matsuo prepared for another night of watchfulness, knowing that survival in these volcanic lands depended on vigilance, endurance, and the ability to read the subtle signs of danger around them. Night descended over the volcanic plateau, cloaking the ash-covered landscape in a dark, eerie quiet. Matsuo crouched near the edge of the temporary camp, eyes straining to pierce the darkness. The glow of distant lava rivers cast flickering red and orange light across the ground, illuminating the faces of the exhausted villagers huddled together. Every tremor, however small, was a potential threat, and sleep was fleeting and shallow. The elder moved calmly among the villagers, checking on the children and the elderly, offering reassurance and guidance. Matsuo observed how experience allowed the elder to detect subtle cues, changes in smoke, heat, and ground vibration, that indicated potential hazards. These instincts were honed by years of surviving in a land governed by the unpredictable whims of the mountain. Suddenly, a strong tremor rattled the plateau. Loose rocks clattered, and a fine cloud of ash rose around them. Matsuo quickly grabbed a boulder for support, guiding the children and helping the adults maintain stability. The elder's calm voice directed them, brace yourselves. Move deliberately. Protect each other. Panic was suppressed, precision and observation were their only defense. After the tremor passed, Matsuo helped reinforce weak spots in the shelters and checked the pathways leading out of the camp. Small fissures had opened in places, and loose debris had shifted dangerously. He assisted in moving supplies to firmer ground and ensured that everyone remained together. Each precaution, however minor it seemed, could mean the difference between life and death. Hours passed under intermittent tremors and the ever-present glow of lava. Matsuo noted the children's exhausted faces, soot-streaked and pale, yet determined to cling to the adults who guided them. Survival was a collective effort, every individual's vigilance contributed to the group's endurance. Matsuo understood that in these volcanic lands, isolation was fatal, and only cooperation could ensure continued survival. By early morning, a lull allowed for a brief respite. Matsuo crouched beside a small stream, sipping water and wiping ash from his face. The surrounding landscape was eerily quiet, save for the distant rumble of the volcano and the faint hiss of lava. Even in moments of calm, vigilance remained crucial, the mountain's threat was constant and unpredictable. As dawn broke, the elder prepared the villagers to move again toward higher, more stable ground. Matsuo assisted in guiding families along the treacherous slopes, carefully observing for fissures, loose rocks, and unstable ash patches. Tremors occurred intermittently, demanding constant attention and adjustment. Every step forward required careful observation, deliberate movement, and attention to the subtle signs of danger in the environment. By mid-morning, they reached a narrow ridge overlooking another stretch of plains. Matsuo observed the shifting lava flows and smoke plumes below. Even distant, these signs dictated the safest path forward. The group paused briefly, adjusting clothing, redistributing rations, and reinforcing weak spots along their route. The mountain's activity reminded them that survival was not guaranteed, and every decision mattered. The afternoon brought a slight lull, allowing the group to progress more steadily along the ridge. Matsuo continued to assist those struggling with the terrain and guided children to safer footing. Tremors and shifting ash remained constant, yet the villagers moved forward with resilience, step by careful step. Each action, each precaution, was a small victory against the overwhelming forces surrounding them. As evening approached, the glow from the distant lava intensified, casting long shadows and illuminating the ash-laden landscape in surreal colors. Matsuo prepared for another night of vigilance, understanding that the mountain's fury could erupt at any moment. Life in these volcanic lands was fragile and relentless, yet the villagers' shared determination persisted, a testament to human endurance amidst relentless danger. Night settled over the volcanic plateau, and Matsuo remained on watch near the edge of the temporary camp. The glowing rivers of lava painted the surrounding ash-covered terrain in fiery red and orange hues, creating an otherworldly, almost surreal atmosphere. Tremors shook the ground intermittently, a constant reminder that the mountain's threat was never far away. Sleep was fleeting, the villagers' survival depended on constant vigilance. The elder moved quietly among the group, checking children and elders, offering guidance and reassurance. Matsuo observed closely, noting how the elder could interpret subtle changes in smoke, heat, and ground vibrations to anticipate hazards. Every movement, every tremor, and every plume of ash conveyed vital information. Survival was as much about understanding the environment as it was about endurance. Suddenly, a violent tremor rocked the plateau. Matsuo grabbed a nearby rock for support as debris tumbled around them. Children screamed, clinging to their parents, while adults quickly moved to steady themselves and each other. The elder's calm, authoritative voice guided them, steady. Move deliberately. Protect one another. Panic could be fatal here, careful observation and measured action were their only defenses. Once the tremor subsided, Matsuo assisted in reinforcing the fragile shelters and clearing pathways blocked by shifting debris. Small fissures had formed, and loose rocks posed a continual threat. Matsuo helped move supplies to firmer ground, and he guided children and the elderly to more stable positions. Every small precaution was crucial in a landscape that could turn deadly in an instant. Hours passed, punctuated by minor tremors and the ever-present glow of lava rivers. Matsuo observed the faces of the children, exhausted, soot-streaked, and wary, but resilient. In this harsh environment, survival was a collective effort, every person's vigilance reinforced the group's endurance. Matsuo understood that in these volcanic lands, isolation meant certain death, while cooperation was essential for survival. By early morning, a temporary lull allowed for brief rest. Matsuo crouched beside a shallow stream, drinking water and wiping ash from his eyes. The surrounding silence was deceptive, the distant rumble of the volcano and the hiss of lava remained constant reminders that danger could erupt at any moment. Even moments of calm demanded continued attention. At dawn, the elder directed the villagers to move again toward higher ground, away from shifting lava flows and unstable plains. Matsuo helped guide families along treacherous slopes, carefully navigating ash-coated soil and rocky outcrops. Tremors occurred intermittently, testing balance and alertness. Every step forward required observation, caution, and attention to subtle environmental cues. By mid-morning, they reached a ridge offering a vantage point over the surrounding valleys. Matsuo scanned the shifting lava rivers and smoke plumes, noting their course and intensity. The group paused briefly to rest, redistribute rations, and reinforce weak spots along their route. Each moment, each decision, was critical in a land where the mountain's fury could strike without warning. The afternoon brought a slight reprieve, allowing the villagers to move with more certainty along the ridge. Matsuo assisted those struggling with the uneven terrain, guided children across treacherous spots, and maintained vigilance for any signs of danger. Tremors, ash, and shifting lava continued to challenge them, yet the villagers pressed on with quiet determination. Each careful step was a testament to resilience in a landscape ruled by fire and trembling earth. As evening approached, the glow from the distant lava intensified, casting long shadows across the ash-filled valley. Matsuo prepared for another night of watchfulness, understanding that survival here required endurance, observation, and unwavering attention. Life in the volcanic lands of 12th century Japan was fragile, relentless, and unforgiving, yet human resilience persisted against the overwhelming power of nature. Night fell heavily over the volcanic plateau, and Matsuo crouched near the edge of the temporary camp, his body stiff from exhaustion. The glow of distant lava rivers painted the landscape in ominous shades of red and orange, flickering across ash-coated buildings and shelters. Tremors shook the ground at irregular intervals, reminding every villager that the mountain's threat was ever present. Sleep was fleeting, vigilance was the only protection. The elder moved among the villagers, checking on children and elders, offering guidance and reassurance. Matsuo observed how experience allowed the elder to detect subtle changes in smoke, heat, and vibrations that indicated potential hazards. Every sign carried meaning: a plume of ash, a shift in temperature, a faint tremor beneath their feet could dictate the safest path forward. Suddenly, a violent tremor rocked the plateau. Matsuo grabbed a rock for support as debris tumbled around them. Children screamed, clinging to their parents, while adults quickly stabilized themselves and others. The elder's calm voice echoed over the chaos: steady. Move deliberately. Protect one another. In this unforgiving land, panic could be fatal, careful observation and controlled action were essential. Once the tremor subsided, Matsuo helped reinforce shelters and clear pathways blocked by fallen debris. Small fissures had appeared, and loose rocks posed constant danger. He moved supplies to safer ground and guided the children and elderly to more stable positions. Each precaution, no matter how small, could be the difference between life and death in this volatile environment. Hours passed under intermittent tremors, the glow of lava rivers providing both light and a stark reminder of danger. Matsuo observed the exhausted yet resilient children, understanding that survival here depended on vigilance, cooperation, and constant attention. Isolation was deadly, only collective effort could ensure continued endurance. By early morning, a lull offered a brief respite. Matsuo crouched beside a small stream, sipping water and brushing ash from his face. The silence was deceptive. Distant rumbles and the hiss of lava reminded him that the mountain's threat was ongoing. Even calm moments demanded careful observation and preparation. At dawn, the elder led the group toward higher, more stable ground. Matsuo assisted families across treacherous slopes, carefully navigating ash-covered soil and rocky terrain. Tremors continued intermittently, testing balance and attention. Every step required observation, caution, and an understanding of subtle environmental cues. By mid-morning, they reached a ridge providing a clear view of surrounding valleys. Matsuo observed shifting lava rivers and smoke plumes, noting their paths and intensity. The group paused to rest briefly, redistribute rations, and reinforce unstable areas along their route. In these volcanic lands, every decision, every action, could determine survival. The afternoon brought a temporary reprieve, allowing steady progress along the ridge. Matsuo guided those struggling, helped children across treacherous spots, and maintained vigilance for signs of danger. Tremors, ash, and shifting lava continued to challenge them, yet the villagers moved forward with resilience and determination. Each careful step was a small triumph against the overwhelming forces around them. As evening approached, the glow from distant lava intensified, casting long shadows across the ash-filled valley. Matsuo prepared for another night of watchfulness, knowing that survival required constant vigilance, endurance, and attention. Life in the volcanic lands of 12th century Japan was fragile and unforgiving, yet human resilience endured, a testament to the power of observation, cooperation, and sheer determination. The night was restless. Matsuo crouched near the edge of the plateau, alert to every subtle sound and movement. The glow of distant lava rivers cast long, flickering shadows across the ash-covered ground. Tremors continued at irregular intervals, shaking loose rocks and sending fine clouds of ash into the cold night air. Every villager remained vigilant, knowing that even a single misstep could prove fatal. The elder moved calmly among the group, checking children and elders, offering guidance and reassurance. Matsuo watched closely, noting how the elder could interpret the faintest changes in smoke, heat, or ground vibration to predict danger. Each small sign, the angle of an ash plume, the hiss of molten rock, or a subtle quiver of the earth, was crucial information in this unpredictable land. Suddenly, a strong tremor shook the plateau violently. Matsuo grabbed a nearby boulder for support as debris clattered around them. Children screamed, clinging tightly to their parents, while adults quickly guided each other to safer positions. The elder's calm voice rose above the chaos: "Brace yourselves. Move deliberately. Protect each other." In these lands, panic could be as deadly as the volcano itself. After the tremor subsided, Matsuo assisted in reinforcing shelters and clearing debris from critical pathways. Small fissures had opened in the ground, and loose stones threatened anyone who stepped too carelessly. Matsuo moved supplies to firmer ground and ensured the children and elderly were in stable, safe spots. Each precaution, no matter how minor, could mean the difference between life and death. Hours passed with intermittent tremors, the lava's glow providing a constant, ominous illumination. Matsuo watched the children, soot-streaked and exhausted, yet resilient, learning the harsh lessons of survival in a volcanic world. He understood that endurance relied not only on physical strength but on constant observation, cooperation, and trust among the villagers. Alone, survival was nearly impossible. By early morning, a brief lull allowed the villagers to rest and regain strength. Matsuo crouched beside a small stream, taking cautious sips of water and brushing ash from his face. The surrounding silence was misleading. Distant rumbles and the hiss of molten lava reminded him that the mountain's threat persisted. Calm moments were fragile and demanded awareness. At dawn, the elder led the group to higher, more stable ground, away from shifting lava flows and fragile plains. Matsuo guided families across treacherous slopes, navigating ash-laden soil and rocky terrain. Tremors persisted, testing balance and attention. Every movement required observation, careful planning, and respect for the subtle cues of the environment. By mid-morning, the group reached a ridge overlooking valleys and lava flows. Matsuo carefully scanned the terrain, noting smoke plumes and shifting lava channels. The group paused briefly to rest, redistribute rations, and reinforce weak spots along their path. Each decision was critical. In these volcanic lands, even minor miscalculations could have devastating consequences. The afternoon brought a temporary easing of tremors, allowing the villagers to proceed more steadily along the ridge. Matsuo helped those struggling with the terrain, guided children across unstable ground, and remained vigilant for any sudden signs of danger. The villagers pressed on with determination and resilience, each careful step a triumph against the relentless forces surrounding them. As evening approached, the distant lava glowed intensely, casting long shadows and illuminating the ash-filled valley. Matsuo prepared for another night of watchfulness, knowing that survival here required endurance, attention, and unwavering vigilance. Life in 12th century Japan's volcanic lands was unforgiving, yet human resilience persisted, a testament to the strength of observation, cooperation, and steadfast determination. The night was thick with ash and the faint red glow of distant lava rivers. Matsuo crouched near the edge of the plateau, muscles stiff and senses heightened. Tremors continued intermittently, subtle at first and then more pronounced, shaking loose stones and scattering fine ash into the cold night air. The villagers huddled together, children at the center, adults forming a protective perimeter. Sleep was fleeting, the mountain's wrath allowed no rest. The elder moved among the villagers, checking on the children and the elderly, providing reassurance and quiet instruction. Matsuo observed how experience enabled the elder to interpret subtle shifts, slight changes in smoke, faint vibrations in the ground, the hiss of distant molten lava, all indicators of potential danger. Each small observation could guide life-saving decisions. Suddenly, a violent tremor rocked the plateau. Matsuo grabbed a nearby rock for support as debris tumbled around them. Children screamed, clinging tightly to their parents, while adults quickly guided each other to safer positions. The elder's calm voice rose above the chaos: "Brace yourselves. Move deliberately. Protect one another." In these lands, panic could be deadly, careful observation and deliberate action were essential. After the tremor passed, Matsuo assisted in reinforcing shelters and clearing paths blocked by debris. Small fissures had appeared, and loose stones threatened anyone who stepped carelessly. Matsuo moved supplies to firmer ground and guided children and the elderly to safer spots. Every precaution, however small, could mean the difference between life and death in this volatile environment. Hours passed under intermittent tremors and the persistent glow of lava rivers. Matsuo watched the children, exhausted and soot-streaked, yet resilient. He realized that survival in this land relied not only on endurance but on constant vigilance, cooperation, and shared awareness. Isolation was dangerous, only collective effort could ensure survival. By early morning, a temporary lull allowed the villagers a brief chance to rest. Matsuo crouched beside a small stream, sipping water and wiping ash from his face. The surrounding silence was deceptive, distant rumbles and the hiss of molten lava reminded him that danger was ongoing. Even calm moments demanded attention. At dawn, the elder led the group toward higher, more stable ground, away from the shifting lava flows and unstable plains. Matsuo assisted families, guiding children across treacherous slopes and navigating ash-laden soil and rocky terrain. Tremors occurred intermittently, testing balance and attention. Every step forward required careful observation and respect for the subtle signals of the mountain. By mid-morning, the group reached a ridge overlooking the surrounding valleys. Matsuo scanned the terrain, noting smoke plumes and shifting lava channels. The group paused briefly, redistributing rations and reinforcing weak spots along the path. Every decision could affect survival. In these volcanic lands, miscalculations could be deadly. The afternoon brought a temporary easing of tremors, allowing the villagers to progress steadily along the ridge. Matsuo helped those struggling with the terrain, guided children across unstable ground, and maintained vigilance for any signs of danger. Each careful step was a small victory against the relentless forces surrounding them. As evening approached, The glow of lava intensified, casting long shadows and painting the ash-filled valley in haunting shades of red and orange. Matsuo prepared for another night of watchfulness, knowing that survival in the volcanic lands of 12th century Japan required constant vigilance, endurance, and communal cooperation. Human resilience persisted even amidst the mountain's indifference and fury. Night blanketed the volcanic plateau, turning the ash-covered landscape into a shadowed expanse, broken only by the distant, flickering glow of lava rivers. Matsuo crouched near the edge of the camp, muscles aching from continuous vigilance and the days of relentless travel. Tremors continued intermittently, shaking loose stones and scattering ash into the cold night air. Each quiver reminded the villagers that danger was omnipresent, and rest was only temporary. The elder moved among the group, checking on children and elders, offering guidance and reassurance. Matsuo observed how the elder read subtle changes, the angle of smoke plumes, faint ground vibrations, the intensity of the distant lava's glow, to anticipate hazards. Each observation informed decisions that could save lives. Experience, attention, and intuition were their most critical tools in this unpredictable environment. Suddenly, a violent tremor shook the plateau. Matsuo grabbed a nearby boulder for stability as debris tumbled around them. Children screamed, clutching their parents, while adults moved quickly to steady themselves and those around them. The elder's calm voice carried over the chaos, "Brace yourselves. Move deliberately. Protect one another." Panic here could be fatal, measured action and careful observation were their only defenses. Once the tremor subsided, Matsuo assisted in reinforcing fragile shelters and clearing pathways blocked by fallen rocks and debris. Small fissures had opened, threatening the safety of anyone who stepped too carelessly. Matsuo helped move supplies to firmer ground and guided children and elders to stable spots. Each precaution, however small, could determine life or death in this volatile terrain. Hours passed under intermittent tremors, punctuated by the unrelenting glow of lava rivers. Matsuo watched the children, soot-streaked and exhausted, yet resilient. Survival here depended not just on physical strength but on vigilance, cooperation, and the trust shared among the villagers. In these lands, isolation meant danger, while collective effort sustained life. By early morning, a temporary lull allowed the villagers to rest and regain some strength. Matsuo crouched beside a shallow stream, sipping water and brushing ash from his face. The silence was deceptive. Distant rumbles and the hiss of molten lava reminded him that the mountain's threat persisted. Even moments of calm required alertness. At dawn, the elder guided the group toward higher ground, away from lava flows and fragile plains. Matsuo assisted families along treacherous slopes, helping children navigate ash-covered soil and rocky terrain. Tremors occurred intermittently, demanding careful attention to each step. Observation and adaptability were critical for survival. By mid-morning, the group reached a ridge offering a clear vantage point over surrounding valleys. Matsuo scanned smoke plumes and shifting lava channels, noting their course and intensity. The villagers paused briefly, redistributed rations, and reinforced weak spots along their path. Each action and decision had weight, even minor missteps could be deadly in this volcanic world. The afternoon brought a slight reprieve, allowing the group to advance more steadily along the ridge. Matsuo guided those struggling with the uneven terrain, helped children across dangerous patches, and remained vigilant for sudden shifts or tremors. Each deliberate step was a small victory against the mountain's relentless forces. As evening approached, distant lava rivers glowed brighter, casting long, fiery shadows across the ash-laden landscape. Matsuo prepared for another night of watchfulness, understanding that survival in the volcanic lands of 12th century Japan demanded constant vigilance, endurance, and careful attention to every sign of danger. Human resilience persisted, even against a mountain that could destroy in an instant. The night was oppressive, thick with ash and the distant red glow of molten lava rivers. Matsuo crouched near the edge of the plateau, every sense alert to the tremors and the faint sounds of shifting rocks. Each subtle vibration beneath his feet reminded him that the mountain could strike at any moment. The villagers huddled together, children in the center, adults forming protective barriers. Sleep was scarce, vigilance was their only safeguard. The elder moved quietly among the villagers, checking the children and elderly, offering reassurance and guidance. Matsuo observed how the elder interpreted subtle cues, the angle of a smoke plume, the faint hiss of lava, or a slight tremor in the soil, all signals of the mountain's next move. Every observation could dictate life-saving decisions. Experience, intuition, and attention were their most powerful tools in this dangerous land. Suddenly, a tremor rattled the plateau violently. Matsuo grabbed a nearby rock for support as loose debris tumbled around them. Children screamed, clutching their parents, while adults quickly guided each other to safer positions. The elder's voice rose above the chaos, "Brace yourselves. Move deliberately. Protect each other." Panic here could be deadly, deliberate action and awareness were essential. Once the tremor passed, Matsuo assisted in reinforcing shelters and clearing critical pathways blocked by rocks and debris. Small fissures had opened in the ground, and loose stones threatened the safety of anyone moving carelessly. Matsuo helped move supplies to firmer ground and guided children and elders to stable spots. Even the smallest precaution could mean the difference between life and death in this volatile environment. Hours passed under intermittent tremors and the steady glow of lava rivers. Matsuo watched the children, soot-streaked and exhausted yet resilient. He realized that survival in these lands depended not just on strength but on vigilance, cooperation, and trust among the villagers. Isolation was dangerous, only collective effort ensured endurance. By early morning, a lull allowed the villagers a brief chance to rest. Matsuo crouched beside a shallow stream, sipping water and brushing ash from his face. The silence was deceptive, distant rumbles and the hiss of molten lava reminded him that the mountain's threat persisted. Even moments of calm demanded attention. At dawn, the elder guided the group toward higher, more stable ground, away from shifting lava flows and unstable plains. Matsuo assisted families, guiding children across treacherous slopes, navigating ash-coated soil and rocky terrain. Tremors occurred intermittently, requiring careful observation and deliberate steps. Survival depended on reading the environment and reacting appropriately. By mid-morning, they reached a ridge overlooking surrounding valleys. Matsuo scanned smoke plumes and shifting lava channels, noting their paths and intensity. The villagers paused briefly, redistributed rations, and reinforced weak spots along the path. Each decision carried weight, even minor miscalculations could be deadly in this volcanic landscape. The afternoon brought a temporary reprieve, allowing the villagers to move more steadily along the ridge. Matsuo guided those struggling with the terrain, helped children across unstable ground, and remained alert for sudden shifts or tremors. Every cautious step was a small victory against the mountain's relentless forces. As evening approached, the glow of distant lava intensified, casting fiery shadows across the ash-filled valley. Matsuo prepared for another night of watchfulness, understanding that survival in 12th century Japan's volcanic lands required constant vigilance, endurance, and attention to every subtle sign of danger. Human resilience persisted, even in the face of nature's indiscriminate fury. Night fell heavily over the volcanic plateau, blanketing the ash-strewn landscape in darkness, pierced only by the distant flicker of lava rivers. Matsuo crouched near the edge of the camp, muscles aching from days of vigilance, eyes straining to detect any movement or change in the terrain. Tremors shook the ground intermittently, dislodging loose stones and sending fine ash spiraling into the cold night air. Every quiver was a reminder that danger could strike at any moment. The elder moved among the villagers, checking the children and the elderly, offering guidance and reassurance. Matsuo watched how the elder read subtle changes, the angle of smoke plumes, the faint hiss of lava, slight ground vibrations, all cues that informed decisions crucial for survival. Each observation could mean the difference between life and death. Experience and intuition were vital tools in this unpredictable environment. Suddenly, a violent tremor shook the plateau. Matsuo grabbed a nearby boulder for support as debris cascaded around them. Children screamed, clutching their parents, while adults moved swiftly to stabilize themselves and those around them. The elder's calm voice carried over the chaos, steady. Move deliberately. Protect one another. Panic could be deadly here, measured action and careful observation were essential. Once the tremor subsided, Matsuo helped reinforce fragile shelters and clear pathways blocked by rocks and debris. Small fissures had formed, and loose stones made every step perilous. Matsuo moved supplies to firmer ground and guided children and elders to stable spots. Even minor precautions could determine survival in this volatile terrain. Hours passed with intermittent tremors and the steady glow of lava rivers. Matsuo watched the children, exhausted and soot-streaked, yet resilient. Survival here depended not only on endurance but on vigilance, cooperation, and shared awareness. Isolation was dangerous, only collective effort could ensure continued survival. By early morning, a lull allowed for brief rest. Matsuo crouched beside a small stream, drinking water and brushing ash from his face. The silence was deceptive, distant rumbles and the hiss of molten lava reminded him that the mountain's threat persisted. Even calm moments demanded alertness. At dawn, the elder led the group toward higher, more stable ground, away from the shifting lava flows and fragile plains. Matsuo guided families along treacherous slopes, assisting children across ash-covered soil and rocky terrain. Tremors occurred intermittently, testing balance and attention. Each step required careful observation and respect for the subtle cues of the environment. By mid-morning, the group reached a ridge overlooking surrounding valleys and lava flows. Matsuo scanned smoke plumes and shifting lava channels, noting their course and intensity. The group paused briefly, redistributing rations and reinforcing weak spots along the path. Every decision was critical, minor miscalculations could be deadly in this volcanic world. The afternoon brought a temporary easing of tremors, allowing the villagers to progress more steadily along the ridge. Matsuo assisted those struggling, guided children across unstable ground, and maintained vigilance for sudden changes. Each cautious step was a small triumph against the mountain's relentless power. As evening approached, the distant lava glowed brighter, casting long shadows and painting the ash-filled valley in haunting shades of red and orange. Matsuo prepared for another night of watchfulness, knowing that survival in 12th century Japan's volcanic lands required constant vigilance, endurance, and attention to every subtle sign of danger. Human resilience persisted, even against a mountain capable of destroying everything in moments. Night had fully descended over the volcanic plateau, and Matsuo remained on guard near the edge of the temporary camp. The glow of distant lava rivers illuminated the ash-laden terrain in flickering red and orange, casting eerie shadows that danced across the weary villagers. Tremors shook the ground intermittently, loosening stones and stirring ash into the cold night air. Every vibration reminded Matsuo and the villagers that the mountain's fury could erupt at any moment. The elder moved methodically among the group, checking the children and the elderly, offering guidance, and maintaining calm authority. Matsuo observed how subtle environmental cues guided the elder's actions, shifts in smoke plumes, changes in the hiss of molten lava, or faint quivers in the soil, all crucial signals for navigating danger. Each observation could mean the difference between survival and disaster. Suddenly, a violent tremor rattled the plateau. Matsuo grabbed a nearby boulder for support as debris tumbled around them. Children screamed, clutching their parents, while adults quickly steadied themselves and those nearby. The elder's calm voice rose above the chaos, "Brace yourselves. Move deliberately. Protect one another." Panic here could be fatal. Deliberate action and constant awareness were the only safeguards. After the tremor passed, Matsuo assisted in reinforcing shelters and clearing pathways blocked by rocks and fallen debris. Small fissures had appeared, and loose stones made footing precarious. He moved supplies to firmer ground and guided children and elders to stable spots. Even the smallest precaution could determine life or death in this volatile environment. Hours passed with intermittent tremors and the unrelenting glow of lava rivers. Matsuo watched the exhausted yet resilient children, soot-streaked and wary, learning the unforgiving lessons of survival. In these lands, endurance alone was insufficient, constant observation, cooperation, and communal vigilance were essential. Isolation was deadly, only collective effort ensured survival. By early morning, a brief lull offered the villagers a chance to rest. Matsuo crouched beside a small stream, taking cautious sips of water and brushing ash from his face. The surrounding silence was deceptive, distant rumbles and the hiss of molten lava reminded him that the mountain's threat persisted. Even moments of calm demanded vigilance. At dawn, the elder directed the group toward higher, more stable ground, away from the shifting lava flows and unstable plains. Matsuo assisted families along treacherous slopes, carefully guiding children across ash-covered soil and rocky terrain. Tremors occurred intermittently, testing both balance and attention. Each step required observation, careful planning, and respect for the subtle cues of the environment. By mid-morning, the group reached a ridge overlooking valleys and lava rivers. Matsuo scanned smoke plumes and shifting lava channels, noting their direction and intensity. The villagers paused briefly to redistribute rations and reinforce weak spots along their path. Each decision carried significant weight, minor miscalculations could have devastating consequences. The afternoon brought a temporary easing of tremors, allowing the villagers to proceed more steadily along the ridge. Matsuo helped those struggling with the uneven terrain, guided children across unstable ground, and maintained vigilance for sudden shifts or tremors. Each deliberate step was a small victory against the relentless forces of nature. As evening approached, the glow of distant lava intensified, painting long, fiery shadows across the ash-filled landscape. Matsuo prepared for another night of watchfulness, fully aware that survival in 12th century Japan's volcanic lands demanded endurance, attention, and unwavering communal effort. Even in a land so fragile and unforgiving, human resilience persisted against the mountain's indifferent power. Night cloaked the volcanic plateau in darkness, punctuated only by the distant, flickering glow of lava rivers. Matsuo crouched near the camp's edge, senses sharp, muscles aching from days of vigilance. Tremors shook the ground intermittently, sending loose stones rolling and clouds of ash spiraling into the cold air. Each subtle vibration reminded him and the villagers that the mountain could unleash devastation at any moment. The elder moved among the villagers, checking children and elders, providing guidance and reassurance. Matsuo observed how the elder interpreted subtle environmental signals, shifts in smoke plumes, variations in the hiss of molten lava, faint tremors in the soil, all signs of potential danger. Each observation informed critical decisions for survival. Experience, intuition, and attention were their most vital tools in this unforgiving land. Suddenly, a violent tremor shook the plateau. Matsuo grabbed a boulder for support as debris tumbled around them. Children screamed, clinging to their parents, while adults moved swiftly to stabilize themselves and those nearby. The elder's calm voice cut through the chaos, "Brace yourselves. Move deliberately. Protect each other." In this land, panic could be fatal, measured action and constant awareness were essential. Once the tremor subsided, Matsuo helped reinforce fragile shelters and clear debris-blocked pathways. Small fissures had appeared, and loose stones made every step treacherous. He moved supplies to firmer ground and guided children and elders to stable spots. Even minor precautions could determine life or death in this volatile environment. Hours passed under intermittent tremors, punctuated by the persistent glow of lava rivers. Matsuo watched the children, exhausted, soot-streaked, yet resilient. Survival in these lands relied not only on endurance but on constant vigilance, cooperation, and trust among the villagers. Isolation meant danger, collective effort ensured survival. By early morning, a temporary lull allowed the villagers a brief respite. Matsuo crouched beside a shallow stream, sipping water and brushing ash from his face. The surrounding silence was deceptive, distant rumbles and the hiss of molten lava reminded him that the mountain's threat persisted. Calm moments were fleeting and demanded awareness. At dawn, the elder guided the group toward higher, more stable ground, away from shifting lava flows and unstable plains. Matsuo assisted families along treacherous slopes, helping children navigate ash-covered soil and rocky terrain. Tremors continued intermittently, demanding careful attention to every step. Observation and adaptability were crucial for survival. By mid-morning, the group reached a ridge overlooking valleys and lava rivers. Matsuo scanned smoke plumes and shifting lava channels, noting their paths and intensity. The villagers paused briefly to redistribute rations and reinforce weak spots along the path. Every decision carried weight, minor miscalculations could have deadly consequences. The afternoon brought a slight reprieve, allowing the villagers to advance more steadily along the ridge. Matsuo guided those struggling with the terrain, helped children across unstable ground, and maintained vigilance for sudden shifts or tremors. Each careful step was a small victory against the mountain's relentless forces. As evening approached, the distant lava glowed brighter, casting fiery shadows across the ash-filled valley. Matsuo prepared for another night of watchfulness, understanding that survival in 12th century Japan's volcanic lands required constant vigilance, endurance, and attention to subtle signs of danger. Even in the face of such unforgiving forces, human resilience persisted. The night air was thick with ash, and the distant glow of lava rivers cast a surreal red-orange light across the volcanic plateau. Matsuo crouched near the edge of the camp, muscles sore and senses alert. Tremors shook the ground intermittently, loosening stones and sending clouds of fine ash spiraling into the night sky. Every vibration reminded Matsuo and the villagers that the mountain could strike with deadly force at any moment. The elder moved methodically among the group, checking the children and elderly, offering quiet guidance and reassurance. Matsuo observed how subtle changes in the environment informed the elders' decisions: slight shifts in smoke plumes, faint hissing from lava flows, tremors in the soil, all clues to where danger might strike next. Each observation could mean the difference between life and death. Experience, attention, and intuition were essential in this unforgiving land. Suddenly, a strong tremor rattled the plateau. Matsuo grabbed a nearby rock for stability as debris fell around them. Children screamed, clinging tightly to their parents, while adults quickly stabilized themselves and those near them. The elder's calm voice cut through the chaos: steady. Move deliberately. Protect one another. Panic here could be fatal, measured action and awareness were their only defenses. After the tremor subsided, Matsuo assisted in reinforcing fragile shelters and clearing debris-blocked pathways. Small fissures had formed, and loose stones made each step precarious. Matsuo moved supplies to firmer ground and guided children and elders to safer positions. Even the smallest precaution could determine survival in this volatile environment. Hours passed under intermittent tremors and the unrelenting glow of lava rivers. Matsuo watched the children, exhausted and soot-streaked, yet resilient. Survival in these lands depended not only on strength but also on vigilance, cooperation, and mutual trust. Isolation was dangerous, collective effort was essential for continued endurance. By early morning, a brief lull allowed the villagers a moment to rest. Matsuo crouched beside a shallow stream, drinking water and brushing ash from his face. The surrounding quiet was deceptive, distant rumbles and the hiss of molten lava reminded him that danger was never far. Even calm moments demanded attention and readiness. At dawn, the elder led the group toward higher, more stable ground, away from the unstable plains and shifting lava flows. Matsuo assisted families along treacherous slopes, helping children navigate ash-laden soil and rocky terrain. Tremors continued intermittently, testing balance and alertness. Observation, careful movement, and respect for the subtle cues of the environment were critical for survival. By mid-morning, the group reached a ridge overlooking valleys and lava rivers. Matsuo scanned smoke plumes and shifting lava channels, noting their intensity and direction. The villagers paused briefly to redistribute rations and reinforce weak points along their route. Every choice carried weight, even minor errors could have deadly consequences. The afternoon brought a temporary easing of tremors, allowing the villagers to move more steadily along the ridge. Matsuo helped those struggling with the uneven terrain, guided children across precarious spots, and maintained vigilance for sudden shifts or tremors. Each cautious step was a small victory against the mountain's relentless power. As evening approached, distant lava glowed brighter, casting long shadows and painting the ash-filled valley in fiery colors. Matsuo prepared for another night of watchfulness, knowing that survival in 12th century Japan's volcanic lands demanded endurance, vigilance, and careful attention to every subtle warning sign. Human resilience persisted even in the face of nature's merciless fury. Night settled over the volcanic plateau, shrouding the ash-strewn landscape in darkness, broken only by the distant glow of lava rivers that flickered like molten fire. Matsuo crouched near the edge of the camp, muscles weary but senses sharpened by constant vigilance. Tremors continued intermittently, dislodging loose stones and stirring clouds of ash into the cold night air. Every vibration reminded Matsuo and the villagers that survival was fragile and temporary here. The elder moved among the group, checking on children and the elderly, offering reassurance and calm guidance. Matsuo observed how subtle environmental cues informed the elder's actions, the angle of a smoke plume, faint hissing from lava flows, or slight ground vibrations, signals that dictated the safest path. Every observation could be crucial. Experience, intuition, and attention were their most important tools in this unpredictable land. Suddenly, a strong tremor rocked the plateau. Matsuo grabbed a boulder for stability as debris tumbled around them. Children screamed, clutching their parents, while adults moved swiftly to steady themselves and those nearby. The elder's calm voice rose above the chaos, "Brace yourselves. Move deliberately. Protect one another." In this land, panic could be as deadly as lava, careful action and constant awareness were essential. After the tremor subsided, Matsuo assisted in reinforcing fragile shelters and clearing debris-blocked pathways. Small fissures had formed, and loose stones made each step precarious. He moved supplies to firmer ground and guided children and elders to safer positions. Every small precaution could be the difference between life and death in this volatile environment. Hours passed with intermittent tremors, the glow of lava rivers painting the valley in ominous red and orange. Matsuo watched the children, exhausted and soot-streaked, yet resilient. Survival here depended on vigilance, cooperation, and trust among the villagers. Isolation was dangerous, collective effort ensured endurance. By early morning, a temporary lull offered the villagers a brief respite. Matsuo crouched beside a small stream, sipping water and brushing ash from his face. The deceptive silence was broken only by distant rumbles and the hiss of molten lava. Even moments of calm required alertness and readiness. At dawn, the elder guided the group toward higher, more stable ground, away from lava flows and fragile plains. Matsuo assisted families along treacherous slopes, helping children navigate ash-laden soil and rocky terrain. Tremors persisted intermittently, testing balance and vigilance. Each step required careful observation and respect for the subtle cues of the environment. By mid-morning, they reached a ridge overlooking valleys and lava rivers. Matsuo scanned smoke plumes and shifting lava channels, noting their intensity and direction. The villagers paused briefly to redistribute rations and reinforce weak spots along their route. Every decision carried weight, minor missteps could be fatal in this volatile land. The afternoon brought a slight easing of tremors, allowing the group to proceed more steadily along the ridge. Matsuo helped those struggling with the uneven terrain, guided children across unstable patches, and maintained vigilance for sudden changes. Each deliberate step was a small victory against the mountain's relentless power. As evening approached, distant lava glowed more brightly, casting long shadows and painting the ash-filled valley in fiery shades. Matsuo prepared for another night of watchfulness, knowing that survival in 12th century Japan's volcanic lands required endurance, vigilance, and constant attention to subtle signs of danger. Human resilience persisted even under nature's merciless force. Night had fully descended over the volcanic plateau, and Matsuo crouched near the edge of the camp, every sense alert. The flickering glow of distant lava rivers cast eerie shadows across the ash-laden ground. Tremors shook the plateau intermittently, sending loose stones rolling and clouds of ash spiraling into the cold air. Every quiver reminded the villagers that the mountain could unleash destruction without warning. The elder moved methodically among the group, checking the children and elderly, offering calm guidance and reassurance. Matsuo observed how subtle environmental cues informed the elder's decisions: faint shifts in smoke plumes, the hiss of molten lava, or slight vibrations in the soil, all signs of impending danger. Each observation could dictate critical decisions necessary for survival. Experience, intuition, and attention were their most valuable tools in this unpredictable terrain. Suddenly, a violent tremor rattled the plateau. Matsuo grabbed a nearby rock for stability as debris tumbled around them. Children screamed, clutching their parents, while adults quickly stabilized themselves and those nearby. The elder's voice rose above the chaos: steady. Move deliberately. Protect one another. Panic could be deadly here, careful, measured action was essential. Once the tremor subsided, Matsuo helped reinforce fragile shelters and clear debris-blocked pathways. Small fissures had appeared, and loose stones made every step precarious. Matsuo moved supplies to firmer ground and guided children and elders to safer spots. Even minor precautions could determine survival in this volatile environment. Hours passed with intermittent tremors and the steady glow of lava rivers. Matsuo watched the children, exhausted and soot-streaked, yet resilient. Survival here relied not only on physical endurance but also on vigilance, cooperation, and trust among the villagers. Isolation could be deadly, collective effort ensured continued survival. By early morning, a temporary lull allowed the villagers a brief chance to rest. Matsuo crouched beside a shallow stream, sipping water and brushing ash from his face. The surrounding silence was deceptive. Distant rumbles and the hiss of molten lava reminded him that the mountain's threat persisted. Even moments of calm demanded vigilance. At dawn, the elder guided the group toward higher, more stable ground, away from shifting lava flows and fragile plains. Matsuo assisted families across treacherous slopes, helping children navigate ash-laden soil and rocky terrain. Tremors continued intermittently, testing balance and attentiveness. Observation and careful movement were critical for survival. By mid-morning, the group reached a ridge overlooking valleys and lava rivers. Matsuo scanned smoke plumes and shifting lava channels, noting their paths and intensity. The villagers paused briefly to redistribute rations and reinforce weak spots along the route. Every decision was weighted with consequence. Even minor errors could prove deadly in this volcanic landscape. The afternoon brought a temporary easing of tremors, allowing the villagers to move more steadily along the ridge. Matsuo helped those struggling with the terrain, guided children across unstable patches, and maintained vigilance for sudden shifts. Each deliberate step was a small victory against the mountain's relentless forces. As evening approached, the distant lava glowed brighter, casting fiery shadows across the ash-filled valley. Matsuo prepared for another night of watchfulness, understanding that survival in 12th century Japan's volcanic lands required endurance, constant vigilance, and attention to every subtle warning sign. Human resilience persisted even against a mountain that could destroy everything in moments. Night fell over the volcanic plateau, shrouding the ash-laden terrain in darkness. The distant glow of lava rivers painted the landscape in flickering red and orange hues. Matsuo crouched near the edge of the camp, muscles stiff and senses alert. Tremors shook the plateau intermittently, loosening stones and sending clouds of ash spiraling into the cold night air. Each quiver reminded Matsuo and the villagers that the mountain could unleash destruction at any moment. The elder moved among the group, checking on children and the elderly, offering guidance and reassurance. Matsuo observed how subtle environmental cues informed the elder's actions: faint shifts in smoke plumes, the hiss of molten lava, slight vibrations in the soil, all signals of imminent danger. Each observation could dictate life-saving decisions. Experience, intuition, and careful attention were their most vital tools in this unpredictable environment. Suddenly, a strong tremor rattled the plateau. Matsuo grabbed a nearby rock for stability as debris fell around them. Children screamed, clutching their parents, while adults quickly steadied themselves and those nearby. The elder's voice carried above the chaos, "Brace yourselves. Move deliberately. Protect one another." Panic here could be fatal. Careful, measured action and constant awareness were essential. Once the tremor passed, Matsuo helped reinforce fragile shelters and clear debris-blocked pathways. Small fissures had appeared, and loose stones made footing dangerous. Matsuo moved supplies to firmer ground and guided children and elders to safer positions. Every small precaution could determine survival in this volatile land. Hours passed with intermittent tremors and the unrelenting glow of lava rivers. Matsuo watched the children, soot-streaked and exhausted, yet resilient. Survival here depended not only on physical strength but also on vigilance, cooperation, and trust among the villagers. Isolation was deadly, collective effort ensured continued endurance. By early morning, a temporary lull offered the villagers a brief respite. Matsuo crouched beside a small stream, sipping water and brushing ash from his face. The silence was deceptive. Distant rumbles and the hiss of molten lava reminded him that danger persisted. Even calm moments demanded alertness and readiness. At dawn, the elder guided the group toward higher, more stable ground, away from shifting lava flows and fragile plains. Matsuo assisted families along treacherous slopes, helping children navigate ash-laden soil and rocky terrain. Tremors occurred intermittently, testing balance and attention. Observation and careful movement were critical for survival. By mid-morning, the group reached a ridge overlooking valleys and lava rivers. Matsuo scanned smoke plumes and shifting lava channels, noting their intensity and direction. The villagers paused briefly to redistribute rations and reinforce weak spots along their path. Every decision carried weight, even minor errors could be deadly in this volcanic environment. The afternoon brought a temporary easing of tremors, allowing the villagers to move more steadily along the ridge. Matsuo helped those struggling with the terrain, guided children across unstable ground, and maintained vigilance for sudden shifts. Each careful step was a small victory against the mountain's relentless forces. As evening approached, the glow from distant lava intensified, casting long, fiery shadows across the ash-filled valley. Matsuo prepared for another night of watchfulness, understanding that survival in 12th century Japan's volcanic lands demanded endurance, vigilance, and unwavering attention to every subtle sign of danger. Human resilience persisted, even in the face of nature's indifferent fury. Dawn broke over the volcanic plateau, the first light revealing a landscape scarred by ash and lava. Matsuo, exhausted but alert, watched as the villagers gathered their few remaining supplies and prepared to descend toward a safer valley. The nights had been long, each tremor and each flicker of distant lava a reminder that survival in these lands was never guaranteed. Yet, they had endured. The elder led the group, steady and calm, interpreting subtle signs in the environment, smoke rising from fissures, the flow of molten rock, vibrations in the soil. Each choice they made was crucial. Matsuo assisted families along precarious paths, helping children across ash-covered slopes and guiding elders over loose stones. Every step required vigilance, care, and cooperation. As they descended, the sounds of the volcanic plateau filled the air, hissing lava, rumbling earth, and the occasional distant crack of shifting rocks. Matsuo reflected on the fragility of life here. A single misstep could undo everything. Yet, despite the ever-present danger, the villagers pressed on with determination. Resilience, adaptability, and mutual support had carried them through the worst nights. By mid-morning, they reached a plateau that offered a temporary reprieve, a safer space away from immediate lava flows and unstable terrain. Matsuo paused, catching his breath, watching the children who, despite exhaustion, clung to each other and their parents. The landscape around them was a harsh teacher, the ash-covered ground, the jagged lava formations, and the distant smoke plumes all reminded them of the power of nature. The elder addressed the group, his voice calm but firm. "We have survived another day. Each step we take, each decision we make, matters. The mountain is relentless, but so are we. Matsuo felt the truth of these words resonate. Survival here required not just courage, but constant vigilance, observation, and an unwavering commitment to protect one another. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the valley, Matsuo helped reinforce temporary shelters and redistribute supplies. Tremors continued, faint but persistent, a reminder that danger was never far. Yet, for the first time in days, a sense of cautious relief settled over the group. They had endured, learning the mountain's rhythms, respecting its power, and relying on each other to survive. By evening, the villagers gathered, sharing small portions of food and tending to minor injuries. Matsuo watched the elder quietly, observing the careful planning that had kept them alive through tremors, lava flows, and nights filled with uncertainty. The plateau remained dangerous, but their collective experience had built resilience, a knowledge that could not be erased by fire or ash. As darkness fell, Matsuo took his post on a ridge, keeping watch while the rest of the villagers rested. The glow of lava in the distance painted the valley in eerie shades, a constant reminder of the land's volatility. He understood now that survival in the volcanic regions of 12th century Japan required more than endurance, it demanded attention, cooperation, and respect for the subtle cues of the environment. In the quiet of night, Matsuo reflected on their journey. They had faced tremors that could topple homes, lava flows that could swallow entire villages, and ash that coated every surface. Yet, human resilience had endured. Every careful step, every shared effort, and every observation of the mountain's warnings had mattered. Life here was fragile, but they had survived, if only for another day. And so, in the volcanic lands of Japan, where the earth could shift in minutes and molten rivers could claim entire settlements, Matsuo and his people continued to endure, a testament to the strength, adaptability, and vigilance that defined life in one of the most unforgiving landscapes on Earth. Survival was not guaranteed, but through observation, cooperation, and resilience, they lived, against all odds.